Hey everyone, this is Bill Krieger from the Veterans Archives podcast, where we preserve and share the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really, anywhere you choose to get your podcast, you should be able to find us. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media to help us reach more veterans and supporters. We are a nonprofit, and this service is completely free for veterans. Every story matters, and every voice deserves to be heard. Spread the word, honor our heroes, and join us on this mission. Follow, share, and tune in, because their story should never be forgotten. Learn more at veteransarchives.org. We'll see you there. Today is Sunday, March 23rd, 2025. We're speaking with Ben Annarino, who served the United States Marine Corps. So good morning, Ben, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, great to see you. We'll start out simple, and the questions will just get harder as we go along. Not that it's a quiz.
So I get a lifeline.
Yes. Yeah, you can phone a friend or whatever you need to do.
That's good.
All right, so let's just start out with when and where were you born?
So I was born in Detroit, Michigan in 1990, November.
Okay. Did you grow up in Detroit, or was that just where you were born?
Yeah, that's a very unique story. So I moved around a lot growing up, but I've lived pretty much everywhere around Metro Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of your earliest memories of growing up then?
You know, we had a very unique childhood. I have one sibling, a sister, younger sister, 3.5 years younger than me, Gina. And, mainly we had a single parent growing up. Mm-hmm. And in being a single parent, my mom worked really hard and trying to provide for us and put us in the best position possible. And that usually meant starting over or trying to find a new spot to, that's better than trying to level up to where we were previously at. A lot of times that meant staying with family. We stayed on a lot of people's couches and whatnot. So, a lot of my early memories were my mom working and, having to support us and her doing everything she could to give us, a good childhood. Okay. It's typical mom stuff, taking us, to what she can and, making pancakes for dinner types, because when we didn't have much, that kind of stuff. Those are my earliest memories.
Okay. Hey, there's nothing wrong with breakfast for dinner.
No, there's nothing wrong.
That's a serious treat in our house. So you just had one sister then?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're the oldest or the youngest?
I'm the oldest. She's 3.5 years younger.
Okay. With all that going on then, did you find yourself kind of in that parenting position a little bit?
Yeah, without a doubt. So I definitely know I matured very fast, mm-hmm. and I was very, very aware at a young age about what's going on around me. It's funny, 'cause, usually when you're 6, 7, 8, you're not really paying attention to like what's happening with mom and dad, or what's happening. Why are they arguing, and what is that going to mean for us next week? Those are the things I thought about at a young age, and I think that helped me. Being in that role at a young age, I think that helped me throughout the rest of my life in different aspects. And there's pros and cons to it, but I think it was a net positive. You miss out on some things as a kid when you are aware of those types of things in life, but you end up, really benefiting from that as an adult.
Right. Yeah. I joked that my brother and sister and I were feral children when we were younger, but we took care of each other.
Yeah.
And same thing. I want to go back a little bit. Your sister's name is Gina, right? Mm-hmm. So my wife is Greek.
Okay.
And there are probably 600 people in her family named Nick.
Yeah.
There's Big Nick, Little Nicky, Big Nicky, all that. But all of my friends that are Italian, there's a Gina in the family too.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny, a little side story. So my dad, he wanted to name me Tito. So you can imagine my last name, Tito Annarino. Right? Like he wanted me to be a professional hockey player, and he thought that would roll off the tongue well. So, obviously he lost that. My mom won the bet there as far as naming me, but yeah, my sister got the Italian name.
Yeah. I was going to say Ben doesn't seem very Italian to me.
It's absolutely not. I guess my mom wanted to name a son Ben like for years. Yeah. So she's like, no, this is what we're naming him.
That's a good, strong name.
Kind of thankful that I'm Ben than Tito. I don't know if Tito would really work.
I almost, like when you said Tito Annarino, I was thinking professional wrestler, but I guess
something.
I guess hockey player would work
something, too. That rolls off an announcer's tongue.
Yeah, definitely. So you're growing up, you're kind of bouncing around. Talk to me a little bit about what school was like for you then.
Imagine being the new kid in school every year. So I went to a new school every single year, from kindergarten to senior year. So, you can imagine what goes with that. It's, you don't have friends. You're always the new kid. So you're different than everyone. You don't really know what's, in when you're that age. You don't know what everyone's talking about. There's no, every clique, you're never a part of one because you can't fit in, So that was very hard. That's something I struggled with for years, is trying to fit in, So I think, in doing that, I became like a chameleon. I could kind of blend in wherever, because kind of survivability, right? In school, when you're young, you find a way to survive. And that was kind of something I had to do. But yeah, it's, it was really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And kids can be mean.
Oh yeah.
Especially those middle school kids. Oh, they're awful.
I truly think middle school is worse than high school as far as because kids are really starting to they're really starting to try to be adults, but they have no idea. At least high school, you kind of start looking like an adult a little bit, but yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, that's true. What are your, some of your memories of your sister then during this time as well?
My sister, she's in the opposite of me in a lot of ways. I think, I was very aware to what was going on. My sister, she kind of had more of a childhood experience. So she didn't really have to worry too much about what's going to happen. She just kind of lived in the moment. So she kind of had a normalish childhood. When it came to high school, my mom was able to keep her in the same high school her whole time. So she was able to make friends and have that whole high school experience. By the time I was a senior, my last year, she was going into freshman year, the next year. So she got to stay in the same high school, which kind of sucks. But I'm glad she got to experience that. But things kind of came together a little bit for our family right as soon as I joined.
Yeah, seems like everything always works out for that baby child, right?
I know. It's there's a lot of experiences growing up that she kind of was oblivious to, which is truly a good thing. She didn't have to, deal with, those issues down the road, but, she definitely had a different experience than I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll bet. Now, with all of that going on, were you ever into playing sports or any teams or clubs or stuff like that during school?
Yeah. I was always, I was a huge hockey fan growing up. My dad, he's not a part of our family at all, but when he was, he, really diehard hockey fan, Red Wing fan. So I grew up loving hockey and all sports. I was always outside. Obviously you don't have friends to hang out with. You just go outside and play sports. So, I had the roller hockey net out in the street, I'm just playing by myself. You can do that all day, so I always had a net, and rollerblades. So, that was one thing I was always doing. But as far as in school, trying to play sports, it's really hard when you're the new kid and trying to join a sports team and, you're always in a different school. It's really hard to transition and do that. So I tried football, I loved it, but, it just wasn't really for me. Soccer, played that for a while, but hockey is something that we couldn't afford growing up.
Right.
So I did a lot of roller hockey at the YMCA and stuff like that. So that was my one way of playing.
Okay. You have mentioned a couple of times that your dad was sort of out of the picture. How old were you when all that kind of went down, if you don't mind talking about that?
Yeah. So my mom and dad, they got divorced when I was about, I think 5. It was about 4 or 5 because my sister was around and then they got divorced right after, shortly after she came around. Mm-hmm. So they got divorced. I was really young, obviously, 4 or 5 years old. I remember they got remarried. They tried it again when I was about 7. And we moved out to Utah for 1 year. My dad got a job out there. We moved the whole family from Michigan out to Utah. Yeah, so we lived in Ogden, Utah. Uh-huh. It's kind of outside of Salt Lake. I think last time I checked, I think it was 30 minutes to an hour outside of Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. Very different if you've ever been out to Utah. Beautiful state, but very different.
It's not Michigan, that's for sure.
No, absolutely not. So we moved out there. we were there, like I said, for a year. I believe that was kindergarten for me, or right around there. We ended up having to move back the next year. Something fell through with the job. And shortly after that, they got divorced. They said, this isn't going to work. So, by the time I was 7, I've already been through 2 divorces.
Right.
As a kid, going through that, it's hard to understand, well, why is mom and dad not together type of thing. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of, fighting, arguing. It's, just dad just was not a very cool head, if that makes sense. So
it does.
Yeah. So, it just didn't work out. And my sister, she's 3.5 years younger. So she was 3 or 4. She kind of was oblivious to that at that point.
Yeah. Which is probably kind of good for her.
It's great for her. Yeah.
So when they split, your dad just sort of disappeared after that?
They tried the whole weekend thing. We did that for a couple years. And then he just, we ended up moving. Like I said, we moved a lot.
Yeah.
My mom ended up meeting someone when I was about 10 or 11. They ended up getting married, and we moved down to Florida. So we moved to Florida, and we were there for a few years. We lived like Central Florida, like right outside of it's Leesburg, Florida. It's where we moved to. My dad just stopped communicating with us. So, that one hurt, because I still wanted to be with my dad, and like see him. And I think every child wants to have both parents, right? You get pros and cons for having a mom and a dad. There's different things each offer. And, when you're a young man, you want to be able to have your dad around. So we didn't, that one hurt, especially now she's with a new guy that's, at the time was good for us. But, they ended up having some issues, and we ended up moving back to Michigan. So we moved back to Michigan when I was about 13, 14. Okay.
Good Lord. I mean, I'm just kind of wrapping my head around. That's a lot of movement. Yeah. I thought we moved around a lot, but man, you you beat me hands down. Wow. That's just incredible.
And in Florida, when we were there, we moved to different schools while we were there because he got into real estate. Mm-hmm. So he was working on, we would live in these like housing complexes that he would be selling houses in.
Right.
We would live in one of like the show houses basically while he was doing it. So, that would be in a different school district. So now I'm starting a new middle school and stuff like that. So it was very challenging. And then when they had their issues, we moved back to Michigan, and I was in a new high school or a new school up in Michigan. And then the following year we moved back down to Florida into a different area. And that's
so they're still together.
They're still together. They had kind of separated for a little bit.
Okay.
They ended up working things out, and we moved back to Florida for another couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's when we were down there the second time. This is when I was about 14 or 15. It's like my sophomore year. My mom, she had a restaurant. So my mom was a waitress for years, and her dream was to open up her own restaurant. So they had a restaurant in Mount Dora, Florida. And it's like a tiny, tiny town that has a train, like old locomotive that goes from Mount Dora and a bunch of other small towns into Orlando. So a lot of people do it as kind of like a fun trip.
Yeah.
You can see a lot of like these old quaint towns in Florida. And she had a restaurant called the Choo Choo Express. And it was like called CHEW, kind of a play off the train. A lot of our business came off of tourists or on the train. So, it was like a small little, one-stop shop for like hot dogs, brats, sandwiches, ice cream parlor, stuff like that. Easy food for someone to get. And I worked there when I was young, like 12. I was always working. Mm-hmm. My mom put that in me. You're always going to work. You're not going to complain. You're just going to do it. So I had that work ethic at a young age. And, we were there for a couple years, and my mom had me, like I said, I was standing on a crate serving soft drinks, when I couldn't even see over the counter. So, we were there for a while, and it ended up falling through when I think I was in 2011, 2012, and the stock market kind of crashed. We lost everything in that. Yeah, we lost the restaurant. That was tough. And I think that was one of the main reasons why we ended up having to move back. There was a lot of things happening at that time. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of moving parts at a very, very young age.
Yeah.
So did you, at some point you ended up back in Michigan semi-permanently?
Yeah. So, long story short, just to kind of cut through a couple years, they ended up getting divorced. So, we moved from Florida. We wanted to start from scratch. My mom moved us to Tennessee. So we're in Brentwood, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville.
Why?
So she had a friend. It's a great question. So we had a great, she had a really good friend, longtime friend that said like, hey, you know what, this is a great area to live. And we tried Michigan. It's always like we end up in the same hole type of thing. We're going to start from scratch again. So we moved to Brentwood, Tennessee. And it was a really ritzy area. You had to be very wealthy to live in that area, but there was apartments that were on the brink, the edge of Brentwood that we could afford. So we ended up moving there. And in order to afford, that, my mom had to work a lot. Mm-hmm. So she had, while we were there, I was in my junior year of high school, and we had some issues with her job, ended up kind of letting her go or something like that. So we couldn't afford it. So I knew at that age, I'm like 15, 16, I think, I knew like, we're going to have to move again. My sister's starting to like school. So I told my mom, what if because I was working at Target at the time as a 16-year-old, and you can only work like 32 hours or something like that.
Yeah, it's all very special. You have to get a permit and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I couldn't work full time.
Right.
I had to be under that, and I had no problem working. I worked after school. I worked on the weekends, the whole weekend. I said, if I was homeschooled, I can make my own schedule. And I remember hearing this from a couple friends. I can make my own schedule and work as many hours as I want. Mm-hmm. There's no limit. So I told my mom, I want to do that. Had to convince her, but ended up convincing her. So I dropped out of high school, homeschooled myself my second half of my junior year. And I was working 50, 60 hours a week. It was kind of nice because I was making enough to help pay the bills and had a little bit of cash myself. But, I just gave basically my check to my mom, and, we helped her pay the bills for us to stay there. After that, we said, we can't maintain this. You need to have a normal school life. So we moved back to Michigan my senior year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool that you could do that and support your family. It's a lot of pressure on someone that age.
It is. It is.
I think it probably helped you become who you are today, just like we talked about earlier. But that's a lot of responsibility on a high school kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So where did you end up back in Michigan?
So we moved in with my aunt and uncle. Okay. They were in Livonia. Mm-hmm. So we lived basically right at Hines and Ann Arbor Trail. It was right there. So around this time, I started thinking, what do I want to do after high school? Most of my family's blue collar, and they didn't really do it right. They're more like kind of contractors. I'll do some work for someone who has some jobs here and there. And I knew I did not want to do that. Right. I saw where they were at in their lives, and I don't want to fall down that same path. I want to pave my own path. And I knew I was very heavily relied upon at home, and I knew I needed to do something for myself. I was very unselfish as a person, growing up to this point. And I told myself, kind of had a long conversation with myself, I need to do something for me. I have not done anything for me at this point. Right. So I was always infatuated with the military. I loved, it's like war movies. I just loved the idea of it.
Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. I didn't see that until after I joined, but I was infatuated with that. I loved the stories and the camaraderie and all that. So I started looking into joining the military, and the way I ended up picking my branch of service was with Google. Technically it was Reddit, but I Googled which is better, Army or Marines. Mm-hmm. No offense to Navy. I did not even consider the Navy or the Air Force, but
it's all good, man.
I Googled Army and Marines, which is better. And of course you go into one of those, Google takes you to like a Reddit, a battle.
Serious rabbit holes, what you just went down. Yeah.
And, I'm 17,
right.
And it's just people bashing each branch, and I ended up going down and I'm making ticks, Army, Marines, Army, who's saying Army and Marines? And it was 80% Marines were the best, So in this Reddit channel. So I was well, maybe I should look into it. So I Googled, Marine recruiters, and I was a recruiter at one point. So now I understand how it happened. But when you request information, they say, hey, you get a free t-shirt, request information. So I'm like, oh, that'd be kind of cool.
Here's my address and phone number.
Exactly. Well, that submits a little ping to their website, and the nearest recruiter goes and talks to you. So, I'm 17. I'm waiting for my package to come in the mail, get some information. And, a few nights later, I get someone to knock on my door when we're having a family party. And me and my cousin, I still remember this vividly. Me and my cousin are in the basement. We're playing Guitar Hero, and he's on the drums. I'm on the guitar. We're jamming out. We're sweating. If you ever played that game, you end up working up a sweat.
Oh, you do.
So, we're playing, and my mom comes downstairs like, Ben, you have a visitor. I'm like, I have a visitor? I'm like, 17. What kind of visitor do I have? I don't have any friends around here. So
I was going to say,
I have no friends.
Who's knocking on my door?
Exactly. So I come upstairs and I see two Marines in dress blues. They're dress blue alphas. They're medals, and they're standing there. They're like, "Is your name Ben?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm thinking I'm in trouble.
Right.
Like,
I'm being arrested for something.
I messed up. So they're like, "Yeah, just wondering if you had a minute to, talk about, the United States Marine Corps. I saw you're interested." And my entire family is there. I have aunts, uncles. We had like a big family dinner.
Right.
So dinner's on the stove. We're ready to eat pretty much. And we sat down for an hour and a half in front of my family and all around the table and just watched like them give their spiel on like why the Marines are the best. And so, that's kind of sold me, like seeing them in uniform. I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what I want. So, my mom, I don't think she was shocked. She didn't know I requested information, but I think she was kind of sold too. I think my whole family was like, man, they look good. They sold it pretty well, and this would be a great option. Mind you, this is 2008. So there's a lot happening in the world at that time. So picking, the Marines at that point, it's a very unique decision, for a young person. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And, so I'm going to ask, like, so the whole family eating dinner together, that's not an uncommon thing, right? I mean,
at the time, no, it wasn't. Yeah. We always ate dinner together as best as possible. Like even the three of us, my mom, my sister, and I. That's one thing my mom did very good. She kept us, very tight, as tight as she could.
Right.
She never, we were not the family to just eat on the couch. We had a formal dinner. My mom always was, likes to entertain with food, and she's in the restaurant business, so she likes to entertain. Wine and dine type of thing. But, when we were living with my aunt and uncle, we had, their kids over, we had, everyone over. Yeah. So that was just one of those nights where it's like, wow, of all nights, this is the one to pick.
Well, and lucky for those two guys, they were very convincing because
were.
That could have gone one way or the other.
Yeah. I could have been, it's amazing. I truly believe everything happens for a reason, everything. And, with that happening, it's funny, that I end up being the recruiter that's doing that years later. It's really interesting.
It is. In fact, I was a recruiter for 4 years. So when you were talking about that, I'm like, oh, I know where this t-shirt thing's going.
Oh yeah. I know exactly how
a lot of young people ended up in the military because they wanted a t-shirt.
Oh yeah. Or a Camaro or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so you decide on the Marine Corps. Did you go into like the delayed entry program?
I did.
Okay.
So I was in a unique spot because in Brentwood, Tennessee, they do trimesters in school. And if you're familiar with that, it's instead of having 1 credit hour in school, like how normal semesters are, trimesters, you get like 0.8.
Okay.
Or something like that. It's like 0.6, 0.7. So it's like a little over half a credit that you get for each class because there's 3 semesters in the year. So in switching there, you have to have a certain amount of credits to graduate high school. And I wasn't behind it all. It's just when you transfer over, you kind of have to make up a couple credits because you're lacking one. I was half a credit short from graduating.
Okay.
If I went to traditional high school.
Yeah.
So I would have to do like 1 summer class. And not because of my fault, just because of the way it's structured.
It's just math.
Yeah. So the math didn't math. So, I wanted to join as soon as possible. I didn't want to wait. And you had to join the delayed entry program. So I was able to join. However, I needed to have a diploma in order to ship to boot camp, which makes sense. So what I tried to weigh my options. I didn't want to wait through the summer because the way the delayed entry program for the Marine Corps worked at the time, there was an 8, 9, 10 month wait at some points to go. So when I was talking to my recruiter, there was an alternative education school that was in Plymouth. So I went there, Starkweather Alternative Ed. So if you're familiar with alternative education high schools, which I'm sure you are as a recruiter.
Every good recruiter knows where the alternative ed high school is.
Yes. Being a student that was like an AB student and then going to an alternative high school where they have smoke breaks and you have people that have their kids, their moms and their kids drop them off to go to school. It's a very unique place. A lot of people that are older trying to get their diploma. And me, just a AB student, just trying to join the Marine Corps early. I was able to do a year of school basically in about 6 months.
That's all self-paced, right?
Yeah, because you can take as many courses as you want there. So my recruiter gave me that option. We checked it out, and I told my mom, I was like, I can walk here from where we were living. I'm going to do it. I'll do 2 night classes a week, and we'll do a full-time schedule, and I'll do it. So I knocked it out. So
you were really good for their stats.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. So, when I joined, one of the things that was important is when I joined, I wanted to be infantry. Mm-hmm. That was the one thing I told them, like, I want to be a door kicker. I want to be the person that's the trigger puller. That's what I wanted. So being a good recruiter as they were, I don't know if you were a recruiter for the Army.
No, I recruited for the Navy. I didn't get into the Army until a couple of years later after I got out of the Navy.
Got it. So the Navy, I don't know if they did it, but they did they would bundle job groups together. So the Marine Corps did like a B6 ground option as a bulk. There's 12 MOSs. We don't pick our MOS until, or you pick your field. You don't get your exact MOS until after you graduate.
Okay.
So I told them I wanted to be infantry, and there was no infantry spots, which that's the most
shocking to me.
It's the most popular MOS for people to want when they join, so it fills up fast. So I get that, but I was sold on the B6 ground option, which had 2 infantry MOSs in it, and it's like LAV crewman. It's like an armor personnel carrier, but you're in the infantry. So I was sold on it because apparently that was the one that you're basically a shoe-in to get. Doesn't matter. Which one you pick, most of the time they end up here. Mm-hmm. That was not the case. So I went into boot camp thinking I'm going to be in the infantry. So when we fast forwarding a little bit, but I graduate boot camp when they're assigning you to go to combat school and everything. I'm thinking I'm going to SOI, School of Infantry, East, and over Camp Lejeune or Camp Geiger. And they're like, oh no, you're going to MCT. I'm supposed to be in the infantry, sir. They laughed at me in my face. Like, no, you're not. You're motor T. I was like, motor T, what's that? You drive trucks. Good luck.
Oh, man.
That's how I found out my MOS is motor T. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. I did not talk to my recruiter much after that. That was pretty sour, but yeah.
Well, let's back up a little bit then, because I want to.
I know I jumped forward a little.
Oh, no. This is perfectly okay. Let's talk about that boot camp experience, right? What was it like? It seems to me that every boot camp story, you get there in the middle of the night on a bus. Was that your experience? Yep.
You get there. I think we got there. Obviously, you don't have a watch. We didn't have phones back then. You couldn't bring anything with you. So, you had your envelope that you shipped there with, and the clothes on your back. You had to have a collared shirt. You had to have jeans and a belt, like slacks and a belt, and, pants, or your shoes that are presentable. Can't wear flip-flops. But yeah, you get there. You get to the airport, and I believe it's North Carolina. I believe you fly in there, and then they take you on a bus, about an hour and a half bus, blacked out windows, put your head down. Bus driver yells, get your heads down. Don't want them to catch you type of thing. And you're nervous. You're like, I'm not looking anywhere. I'm doing exactly what I'm told. Mind you, I was raised by my mom the whole time. So I have not experienced this ever. This type of stern, in your face kind of, yelling. I wasn't able to be on too many sports teams because of how often I moved. So I was not used to this.
You're being introduced to testosterone.
Yes. Yeah. Full on, this is me just trying to branch out on my own. This is my first time. I want to just do something for me. And this is what I pick.
Good choice.
Yeah. So trial by fire. Right. So I get there and it's about 1 a.m. pitch black. You have a couple street lights above the bus and you get a drill instructor. It's just jacked and his arms are about to rip out of his sleeves, and he just starts screaming, lists off his spiel that you can look it up online, and they do the same spiel every time. It's, recited. And then, we will make you Marines, we're not going to let you fail on yourself type of thing. And, get off my bus. He starts screaming at you. And I'm just like, oh my God, what did I do?
You're questioning your own judgment at this point.
Oh, absolutely. So, we get on the yellow footprints, the yellow footprints at a 45-degree angle, and you put your feet on them, and you see these big silver doors in the front of the building. That's the entrance to Parris Island is right there. And you will enter those doors as a civilian, and you'll exit as a Marine. So, we get in there, and you have INDOC, you're just getting administratively, checked in, and the whole time you don't even know what's going on. It's hard to even remember because it's a blur.
You're like in a fog, right?
Yeah. It's the fog of war at that point. You have no idea. I'm just keeping my head down, and I'm running as fast as possible. And, you call home, you have to call on those crappy phones with the, it's dial your number. Hopefully you remember it. You're just like, I gotta, God forbid you have someone screaming at you to dial your number, and you're screaming this recited little card. It's like, I have made it to Parris Island. I am safe. I will contact you in, 1 to 2 weeks with a letter. Please do not send any care packages. Something like that. So, get your head shaved. You start getting all your gear and everything. And it's the Marine Corps. I will say, it's very good at taking everything that you are comfortable with and ripping it away. And they do that for a reason.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's very important. That's kind of like the core basis on what makes Marines Marines. It's, we'll give you nothing, and we'll take away everything that you have till you have nothing. And then we'll give you what we want you to have. And you just got to make it work. And, they get rid of that comfort zone. Like, there is no comfort zone. You're used to living in the uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes the Marine Corps such a unique branch of service. And I know things have changed over the years, but, back then, I think, we were still, a very tough indoctrination right off the bat. I know things have changed a little bit, and I still think it's an elite branch, but, that was a shock to me.
Yeah. Well, I think the Marine Corps has probably changed the least of all the branches, for sure. I'm just curious. You say, like they rip away all the things that make you comfortable. What is like the one thing that you had? I don't mean like physically, but maybe just mentally. What is the one thing that you had that they took away from you that really you were like, oh boy, this is really going to be different?
They took away, for me, I always had growing up, if something was bad, I had my mom there to run things off of. They didn't take it away per se, but like they made you realize that no one on the outside of here is going to help you.
Yeah.
You can't run to them. Like, I am everything to you right now. Like, you come to me for anything, and it better be good.
I'm your mother. I'm your father.
Yes. That taking away that safety net and making you feel like there is none, that was hard. That's very hard. And I think for someone in my place in life at that point, that was very difficult for me because I was used to having my family, my core family there. And then not having that, like that was a shock to me. And I think I wasn't really prepared for that right away. But I think that was probably the best thing I needed because I was kind of sheltered growing up because I had, my mom there, and it was just my mom, and my sister. So it's like I had my little chaos that I was used to, but I could control it. And now it's just uncontrollable chaos every day. I don't know what's going to happen. I've never been talked to like this. I don't know anyone, which that's not new to me, but everyone is as scared as I am type of thing. I was not used to that. So that was the biggest shock, plus the biggest blessing at the same point.
Right.
On the other side of the coin.
So you went from your core CORE family to your core CORPS family, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Kind of how that works.
Yeah.
So you're in basic training. You kind of go through that whole initial phase where you're doing all the running around, getting uniforms, getting shots, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Walk me through kind of briefly how basic training went for you.
I went there August 24th, 2009. South Carolina, Parris Island is very hot. It is extremely hot and miserable.
Yeah.
I still to this day, I don't ever want to go back to South Carolina. It was in that time of year, it was miserable. I've never been in a heat like that, where it's just everywhere you go is hot.
Unrelenting, right?
Yeah, it's just, you walk outside and it's hard to breathe because it's so humid. So, that makes it very difficult. And plus, everywhere you look is just sand and just trees. You don't see anything outside of Marine Corps platoons getting hazed in a sand pit. They segregate you off from everybody. So, running around trying to drill, everywhere you go is as fast as possible. You're marching everywhere. One thing, Marine Corps really focuses on drill, and marching with your rifle. That's everywhere you go, you are marching and you are being corrected, arms 90 degrees, your rifle needs to be locked in, it's unrelenting. So, doing that now, I left as a staff NCO when I got out of the Marine Corps, but those simple obedience orders are so important. And you don't really realize it when you're young. You're just like, why does it matter if my thumb is just a little different? But it does. It truly does. So if you can't listen to some basic order like that, it will affect you down the road at some point. So that was hard to get used to. It's, why do these small little details matter, and always being corrected? And, I was in 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, Platoon 1085. We started with 80 guys or 85 guys. I think we graduated with like 60, and we had lost a lot more, and you pick up others on the way in. But first phase, it's broken up into 3 phases, Marine Corps boot camp. First phase, you start out with your boots, without boots. You start out with Go Fasters, so your tennis shoes. Go
Fasters, I've never heard them called that.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
They change everything. Like I said, they take everything that and they get rid of it. So, you have a pen, it's an ink stick. You have, a flashlight, it's a moonbeam. You have, your quarter deck. You have all the naval terms. We use all those. Trying to learn that. Your shoes, your Go Fasters, your reflective belt, your glow belt. It's so all of those terms you're getting used to, and they make you earn that uniform. So like, you don't have your name on your blouse. You have this plastic little name tag that's clipped on your shoulder, that tells you what your rations are at the chow hall. So if you're a double rats, it's red. If you're normal, you're, just a white one.
What if you're a disgusting fat body?
If you're a fat body, they paint 2 white stripes on your t-shirt with spray paint, and you are a fat body. You're half rats.
Wow.
Yeah.
They don't mess around.
No. And there's also a unique tag. I think it's a different color. I was just a normal Gen Pop type guy, but the fat bodies, they were half rats. So they had half scoops of everything, and they couldn't get certain items in the chow hall line. You don't get a pick. You just kind of go down the line. They give you one of each. But one thing that you had in boot camp was peanut butter packets. Like peanut butter packets were the gold. If you could get one, that's prime trade bait, for anything.
Yeah.
So you were not allowed peanut butter or any sort of sweet. Like every now and then they would have cookies. You got one cookie, and very rare would you ever get that, but they were not allowed to do that. And you'd have drill instructors waiting. Like, I wish you would.
Yeah.
It's like, I wish
please
you would.
do.
Yeah, please do. Like, you're about to get hazed outside.
Right. Not hazed, you're going to get trained.
Oh yeah. Incentively trained.
Yes.
Repeatedly.
Yes.
They single you out. There's we don't care about your feelings. If you're fat, you're fat.
Right. And you're not going to eat what everyone else eats.
Yeah.
Right. It's not fat shaming. You need to be in shape if you're going to be in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Totally get it. All right. But so you're earning your uniform as you go.
You earn it. So you don't even get to blouse your boots. You don't get boots until you complete your first phase, which is about 4 weeks. Marine Corps boot camp's 13 weeks. Mm-hmm. So your first month is basically you just looking disgusting. You can barely wear your uniform right. Your sleeves, when rolling, and Marine Corps is kind of known for our tight sleeves and looking really good in uniform. Your sleeves look like shit. You just look awful.
Just complete garbage.
You look like a goober, just walking around everywhere. And you can tell the drilling, the platoon, they don't sound good.
Right.
Everyone's heels hit the deck at the same point when you're marching. And the boots they give you really make a unique sound when they're hitting the ground all together with 80 guys. And when you're marching when Go Fasters, it sounds like a squish. You sound awful. And also
by design.
By design. Like you don't really have any pride yet. So when you reach that end of the first month, the first month is really just getting incentively trained all the time. You're not really doing much. You're doing a lot of physical training. You're doing obstacle courses. It's really kind of you're doing a lot of classes, of like history, stuff like that. You don't do anything with weapons training yet. You're carrying a weapon every day. You sleep with it basically at the end of your rack, but you do nothing outside of just learn of what I'm going to tell you to do. You're going to do it well. And that's drill, Marine Corps history, and physical fitness.
Yeah,
that's it. So at the end of your first month, you finally get boots because you're getting ready to go to the range to start qualifying, and that's when you really start feeling like, oh man, I've made it. I've made it.
I have arrived.
I get to blouse my boots. I get to look good. And then like it just feels different when you're marching everywhere. You can hear that sound, and it's amazing what happens to a platoon when you are all sound really good. Things start coming together. So you start building that camaraderie as a platoon. So you can start saying like, wow, we sound good. Like we're getting it together. And you start to correct each other a little bit, under your breath. You really start building that camaraderie. And that's where it started to click for me. It's like, there's a reason why we do this. Like everything we do it's by design. There's nothing that is happening here that they don't want to have happen.
Right.
So,
and the whole time you're there, there's new people are cycling in and the old guys are cycling out. And so you're watching not only your own evolution, but the evolution of the new people coming in, right?
You do. And, seeing when you're a first phase recruit, seeing a third phase recruit is night and day. Mm-hmm. Like they look completely different. They just look older. They kind of just, they're physically, they look different, obviously they're more slim, they're more trim. Their uniform looks tight, they look spotless, they're never getting messed up in the sand pit. Those guys are always locked in. You're like, man, I'm never going to make it to that point, but you eventually do.
Right.
And, you start having that pride in that uniform, cause what it looks like from the other side. Like, man, those guys look like their uniforms look tight. Like they look locked on. Their drill looks amazing. They're loud. They're doing cadence loud. Those guys, I want to be like that. So that way, every time you get to that next phase, you take pride and I finally made it. I got to make sure the young guys coming in look up to me and know that I'm tight. I'm doing what I need to do. Mm-hmm. So that's where that pride comes in. Yeah. That's something I really started to, I really ran with my whole time in the Marine Corps was taking pride in, what I'm doing and where I'm at, and trying to always be better. Yeah.
Yeah. And so boot camp worked.
It did.
Right.
It did. I had to lose some weight after I joined. I had to lose about 20 pounds to ship to boot camp. So I lost it. I was about 185 when I joined. I needed to be about 170, 165. So I got down to 160. Just worked my butt off running and stuff in the winter. Just like the winter time sucked. But when I left boot camp, I was about 145 pounds.
Wow.
I was a string bean.
That's a big change.
Yeah. There's your skin and bones, but I could run like the wind and I could do anything you wanted me to do forever.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop. Endurance was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about graduation from basic training then, since we're kind of getting towards that point in basic, what was it like? So you remember getting there and being a soup sandwich and now you're graduating. Did your mom and sister come out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Walk me through that.
Yes. My mom, my sister, my aunt, and my uncle came down. And then they saw me graduate. It's such a weird experience going from seeing them when you're like a civilian and then they come back and I've lost 20 more pounds. I'm like the pictures of me after boot camp, I look like a death camp victim. Yeah. Like I look awful, but that's by design. They want you to be someone that'll never quit physically.
Right.
And that's what they want. They don't need a bodybuilder. They need someone that can just go forever. It's weird because you go from one day not being able to speak in the first person, because they take that away. You can't say I in boot camp. It's this recruit, this recruit, that. These recruits, it's, they take away your own personality. So then now you see your family and you're still saying this recruit to your family. And it's like, you correct yourself. Like, it's okay. I can say this now. Like I've graduated. Right. It's just a formality at this point. It's really weird. It's a unique experience. My mom I think she was like kind of blown away a little bit, not in a great way. She's like, what happened to my son?
What'd you do to him?
Exactly. So, but I got to show them, the base. I got to show them, like, I had one of the worst days of my life in this sandpit. It's, you get to tell them your horror stories a little bit, but
right.
They're kind of blown away, show them the squad bays, and, it's unique. Nothing changes from the 60s. It's the same barracks, same squad base.
I don't think it's changed from the 40s.
Yeah, it's awful. But yeah. No, it's unique. I think my mom was blown away. It's like, this is where you were at? It's like, yeah, it's a shithole.
Yeah. Welcome to my world, Mom.
Yeah, but it's been great. I'm going to miss it.
Did that give you a different perspective on family in your life when you walked out of basic training as a graduate?
Yeah. I think I was really kind of like a happy-go-lucky type kid. And I think coming out of boot camp, I was a little more focused all the time. Kind of like I always want to be ready to do whatever type of thing. And so I want to say it kind of made me a little standoffish. That's the best way to put it. And, I was kind of a little more reserved, I guess. Wasn't kind of like the out there in your face type of like person I was before. Just always kind of serious a little bit, just slightly more serious. So that's what I noticed when I got out. Yeah.
Okay. And you finish up basic training. Where you go from there?
So after that, I went to Marine Combat Training, so MCT, down at Camp Geiger. And like I said, I thought I was going to SOI.
Right.
So
I don't mean to laugh. When you
no, it's very funny.
Was it when you got to MCT that you found out that I'm going to drive trucks?
I found out in boot camp.
Oh.
So once they start reading everyone's MOSs, it's like your admin week, your last admin week. This is kind of around when family comes. They start saying like, Private Annarino, you're 3531. I'm like, well, I knew 0300 is infantry. Right. Like it's your infantry MOS field. So it's 03 and then a couple other numbers tells you your designator for what kind of infantryman you're going to be. And I heard 3531. I was like, well, there's a 3 in there. Like maybe that's a different type of infantry. And I was like, sir, what is that? And he goes, your motor T. And I'm like, and then he kept reading off and I was like, he's like, what? I was like, what is that? Like, I don't know what that is. I'm supposed to be infantry. And he's like, no, your recruiter lied to you. You're a motor T. I was like, what do they do? And he's like, you drive trucks. Next. Like it just goes on the next.
Yeah.
And that hit me hard. And I didn't really realize it until I went to MCT because I saw my friends that were in boot camp. You all go to the same place pretty much, but then you split off. Infantry one way, non-infantry the other. And I saw all my friends that were infantry going in this way. And I was like, man, like this is I don't know what I just did. Like what happened?
This sucks.
Yeah. So I didn't really know yet. I was like, I'm still going to be a Marine, whatever.
Right.
But I'm not going to be kicking indoors. That's not my main job.
Right. But, maybe driving over them, but not kicking them.
Yeah. Which, got to do. But, But yeah, it's, So MCT, it's different. It's only there for a month. It's combat training. So it's, we just basically qualify in the rifle at boot camp, just learn how to shoot up to 500 yards, hitting the target. It's one thing the Marine Corps is good at is teaching you how to shoot well and accurately. And now we want to teach you how to shoot and move type of thing. And every Marine, they have the term, every Marine's a rifleman. That's, it's a little overplayed term. And not every Marine's a rifleman, but every Marine's proficient on the rifle. Let's just say that. They train to a pretty high standard, but, MCT is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. For me, when I went there, I graduated boot camp in November, like November 10th or like November 15th. It was very mid-November. We went to MCT right at the end of November. Mm-hmm. So I got a week home on PTAD, recruiter's assistance, stayed there for a little bit. And then I went to MCT, which North Carolina is brutally cold. So we were there, we were in holding platoon for about 2-3 weeks because they were backed up. And we were there like through December. Mm-hmm. It was brutal in the mornings. You wake up, you're in the field pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
You wake up and your camelback is frozen solid. I was like, this is the polar opposite from what I'm used to.
I was going to say.
I went from a billion degrees to now it's freezing. I was like, what am I doing?
It's like the military just can't get it right.
No, and the Marine Corps especially, they put you in the most worst places, but yeah, so, it was unique. You got to shoot the weapon systems. You got to, do, your mount training, your mounts, like your urban training,
Right.
staying in buildings, and fighting off your fake enemies. And, it's, that kind of stuff's fun. That's the Marine Corps military stuff you go in for. And, you have a blast. You think you're like, oh man, I could win this war, right? Send me over now. I'm
all
ready.
by myself.
I'm ready. It's like you think you're the best. So after that, then I go to MOS school, which MOS school is in Fort Leonard, Missouri. I know you're very.
Oh my God, I'm so familiar with Fort Leonard, Missouri.
After hearing a couple of your podcasts, you're very familiar with it. So I'm in Motor T school. You're 88 Mike.
Yeah.
So I am. I go to MOS school there, and January in Fort Leonard Wood is brutal.
That sucks.
I thought Camp Johnson, Camp Geiger was brutal. Missouri is a different beast. That's a different beast.
It is.
So I was in holding platoon again, and this is kind of important. There's a major backup after the Christmas break. So you can only pick up so many classes at a time.
Yeah.
They had so many people that graduated boot camp at that point. This is 2009. There's still a very high need for, Marines to come in and enlisting. So there's a lot of influx, but they can't only, they only have so many instructors and classes open. So I was in holding platoon for about 4 or 5 weeks.
That's a long time.
And you're just sitting in a classroom. Every now and then they'll put on a movie, but you just sit in a room. Like you do nothing.
Right.
So you can't go on leave. You don't get time off. It's just cleaning your rooms, and it's just busy work, all day. And standing in formation, you don't get a SIF issue or you don't get gear issue. So there's no jackets. And the Marine Corps is very strict on what you can wear in uniform. So unless it's issued, you're not wearing it.
Right. And you're only going to wear it when we tell you can wear it too.
And God forbid there's one person that forgets it. No one's wearing it. Yep. So, we didn't get a Gore-Tex top. We didn't get anything. And, it's either raining sideways or freezing rain or snow or just blistering wind. Missouri's not a fun place in the winter.
It's a special kind of hell.
It is. It is. So, that was unique, but I was backed up for about almost 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. So MOS school is pretty uneventful. It's, you learn all the vehicles, it's drive all your 7 tons, your Humvees, and learning the ins and outs, maintenance, you do your driving simulators, stuff like that. Yeah. They do our combat simulators in there, which is actually really neat. You do your combat convoy simulator. So you have like a fake gun up top and you're able to do stuff that's probably the coolest part about it. But since I was backed up for a month before I went to the fleet, I missed out on a deployment in my first unit to go to Iraq.
Okay.
So if I was not backed up, like we were not supposed to be, I would have went to a deployment to Iraq that the platoon that I would have deployed with hit a 200-pound IED and cut a 6x MRAP in half. So like I said, I think everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
And those guys had a really rough deployment. And they were over in Nawa. Mm-hmm. And it was rough. But, they like I said, everything happens for a reason. But yeah, so, at the end of your MOS school, you pick your duty stations where you want to go. And I think something happened to me where I got so much confidence in myself after boot camp and MCT that I was like, you know what? I'm blazing this new trail so much. Let's try to keep doing it.
Yeah, why not?
So you get your 3 choices, East, West, or overseas. Your 3 choices in the Marine Corps. That's all you get. I chose overseas, number 1. Mm-hmm. So overseas in the Marine Corps means Japan and Hawaii. So I was really kind of hoping Hawaii, but I got Japan.
Yeah.
So I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan in 2010. Got there like March 2010. And that was the start of my fleet experience.
That's interesting. My stepbrother was a Marine, and he spent a lot of time in Okinawa, Japan. He loved it. Absolutely loved it there.
Yeah.
But it's until you start doing this, you don't realize that there's certain patterns and similarities depending on what service that you're in. Yeah. You just think, overseas, you're going to go to Korea or whatever. No, that's the Army. Yeah. Not necessarily the Marine Corps. So let's talk a little bit about Okinawa. And did you take a little time before you went?
Yeah. So they gave us about 10 days of time off. I think we got a little more PTAD. They gave us an extension on PTAD, which is recruiter's assistance.
Yeah.
They gave us that extra because we're going overseas, and going to Japan, it's hard to come back. So like as many times as you want, it's expensive.
Right.
So I was home for 10 days. I said bye to the family. Definitely hard on my mom. That was going to be a hard one.
I'll bet.
So I've never flown. I don't think I've ever flown on a plane prior to this, prior to going to boot camp. That was my first plane trip.
Really?
So now this is my third plane that I'm on, and I'm going overseas. So I go overseas with about 10 guys. We're all on the same flight. We're easy to pick out, high and tight, and we look like we're...
I bet they're in the military.
Yeah, it's like, some camo backpack or something. You can tell them immediately. So it's still a fun game I like to play.
Yeah.
Who's in the military when I'm in an airport. But yeah, flying over there. I ended up going to I went to boot camp with a friend of mine, and then went to MCT with him, and now we were in the same unit in Japan. So I ended up going with him over to the same truck company in 3rd Marine Division over in Okinawa. And so we got to travel together, which is kind of nice.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey, listeners, we need your help to keep the Veterans Archives podcast going. We're a nonprofit dedicated to preserving the stories of our nation's heroes, and we provide this service completely free to veterans. Your support helps us record, share, and archive these incredible stories so future generations never forget the sacrifices made for our freedom. Every donation, big or small, makes a difference. Visit veteransarchives.org to contribute today. Help us honor their service by ensuring their voices are heard. And thank you for your support, and thank you to all the veterans who have served our country. I'm going to point something out that's interesting to me in this whole thing, right? You spent your whole life like not having a lot of friends.
I know. Now I get someone.
You joined the Marine Corps. Now you got this dude that's like,
I know.
You've been friends for this whole time.
I know.
That's pretty cool.
I know. And that's kind of one thing that kept me in for as long as I did. You get a family. It's like a family that you don't ever leave type of thing. But yeah, no, it was really unique. But yeah, so we ended up getting to Tokyo. You land in Tokyo, and then if you've ever been to the Tokyo airport, I don't know if you've ever been
I have not.
So you have your international side of the airport, and then you have to take a bus or like this bullet train to the other domestic side. And Okinawa is considered their domestic. So it's like a territory of Japan. Mm-hmm. It's technically not Japanese, but it's a territory.
Oh, kind of like Puerto Rico is to the United States.
Very similar.
Okay.
But Okinawa is like their Florida, if you think about it. People go down there to retire and to kind of escape the busyness of the city. Because Okinawa is like a country, kind of farm, very quiet, island. Very beautiful, but it's, mostly farmland and just nature.
Okay.
For the most part. There's not a lot of urban cities. I think there's only 2. It's Naha, which is south, and Nago, which is north. That's the name of the 2 cities. So
easy enough to remember.
Yeah, I know. It's not very hard to remember. But so anyway, we're late to our flight. We're sprinting through the Tokyo airport, and you're trying to ask people like, where do I go? I don't know. Everything's in Japanese. Like, I don't really understand. So having these people help you out in broken English, and we ended up getting there, but we get there in the middle of the night. You see a Marine and camis, and, the Okinawa airport, Naha airport, in a white Govy van. And it's like, you see a bunch of other Marines there. And you're like, well, I guess I'm in the right spot.
Yeah.
It's like, which unit you with? And you tell them your unit, like, get in. It's like, okay, middle of the night. It's 10:30 at night. So we get in the Govy, we drive, through, Japan or through Okinawa, and we get on base. We go to check into our rooms, and the guy driving us just drops us off at the barracks. He's like, go see the duty. He'll tell you where to go. So, I'm brand new. I got my bags, like my big roller bags, and I'm like, this is Private so-and-so, and this is PFC, so-and-so, and we're here to check in. Like, you're in this room. It's the restriction room. The restriction room has no carpet, no nothing. It's just a tile room with nothing in it.
Yeah, super nice.
Oh yeah, it's great. You take away everything.
Yeah.
So when I check in, it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and everyone is doing a field day. And it's field day night. I think it's like a Thursday night. Well, there was a uniform inspection the next morning. So they're going to do our green alphas, going to be inspecting it and your rooms. Mind you, we just checked in. We have no cleaning supplies. We have our uniforms just got flown across the country, or across the world.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, you better not be messed up. So the platoon that we were supposed to, one of the platoons that was back, they just got back from Iraq as well. And they were the NCOs that were running the field day. Mm-hmm. And we have these 2008, 2009 Iraq vets that are seeing a fresh meat come into the barracks. And I guess this unit that we checked in with, truck company, they haven't had a new boot drop in 7-8 months. Like they were missing guys. Like, so there's a lot of turnover. So they needed some new fresh Marines to come in, and we're the first ones. So we're fresh meat.
Lucky you.
Yeah. So of course, field day, and you're brand new. I'm going to mess with you all night. So, you had these giant jacked Marines coming in that just got back from deployment. You can tell they look different. I'm used to these skinny Marines that are just young. Yeah. Now I have this guy, it's got like a 5 o'clock shadow, and he's just got tatted up, and he's drinking a protein shake. He just got back from the gym, and he's like threatening to, literally make your life hell. And it's like, I thought we were all on the same team. I thought we're all good. So it's another wake up call, right? So that was a long night. I think we slept maybe 2 hours, and they found us some cleaning supplies. They found us an iron, and we were ironing our uniforms. And we have a major inspecting our alphas the next morning, that was my check-in to the Marine Corps.
Welcome to Okinawa.
Yeah. I was like, is this how it's going to be every night? Like, this is awful, So, it's every place I go, it's almost like a trial by fire.
Yeah.
At this point.
But you're used to that.
Kind of.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you've been doing this your whole freaking life.
A little bit. Yeah. And it's like, I think repeatedly doing that, it's truly how I learn best. Still to this day. Just throw me in it. I will survive. Yeah. I'll come to the top, but it might take me a little bit, but I'm going to make it.
I'll sink or swim. We'll see what happens.
I usually swim, but
No.
Well,
and you had the added bonus too. So if they hadn't had any new folks come in, that guy who's at the bottom of the chain, the chain there, the last dude, he's been that last dude for a long time, and he's ready for someone else to be the last dude.
Finally,
got
someone else to take my spot.
Yes, I'm gonna be a jerk about it too.
Oh yeah. But no, it's it was unique checking in. It was you do your first week check in, and that corporal that was that big burly guy that was saying that kind of messed with us all night.
Right.
He was our driver taking us, because in Okinawa you have like many different bases, and you have different bases you have to go to check in. Like SIF's on one base, admin is on one other base. It's kind of weird how it's set up. So he has to drive us around all day in a Govey, and he was hungover the next day. He was so hungover. Should not have been driving a Govey, but I remember the morning he picks us up. We get out after our uniform inspection. We're in our camis, and he looks rough. And he's like, all right, get in. So we're driving. We get off base, and he literally pulls over kind of and does like a crawl and just pukes out the window. No. He just pukes out the window and just keeps driving. Uh-huh. And the other Marine that was next to him, like a Lance Corporal, he just kind of looks at him like, like it's just another day, and just keeps driving. I'm just like, what is happening? Like I grew up in a family where we weren't really big drinkers. We're very religious.
Yeah.
It was not common I don't think I've ever seen anyone drunk, like in person like that. Mm-hmm. And that was my first time seeing someone hungover to that point.
A little culture shock.
I never even had a beer at that point in my life, so I'm sheltered. I was 19.
You are the definition of fresh meat.
Oh yeah. That was all new experiences to me. I was not used to this. So I was just blown away. I'm just like, oh my God, like what is happening? And I look at my buddy, and he's kind of chuckling, and my buddy joined when he was older. So he was 24, 25, and I was 19. Mm-hmm. So, he's a PFC, I'm a private. And I'm just like, boy, he's used to this. Yeah. He grew up, he partied, prior to this. So, so it was a unique experience. I had a very, couple, eye-opening experiences seeing like now you have high-ranking guys walking around everywhere, master sergeants, gunnies, and, first sergeants, and you have, sergeant majors and officers everywhere. And I don't know what to do with my hands. I'm in a spot where the highest rank I ever saw was like a staff sergeant, and, it's,
do I salute? Do I wave?
Yeah, I don't know what to do.
I smile? Do I not?
It's like a couple months ago, I was a recruit, I don't really know. So, that was a really big wake up call, cause now you're learning how to do the day-to-day life of a Marine, which it's more so like a job, it's when if you're not in the military, you think that's what you're doing every day is kicking indoors and doing stuff. It's a 9 to 5 type job with some weird stuff sprinkled in between. That's not really normal, but yeah.
Well, people ask like, what did you do? And yeah, it's like, I just did what you do when you go to work. We go to meetings, we train, we, if I'm driving a truck, maybe I'm driving a truck somewhere. It's, but people do have that perception that the military is just nothing but breaking things and killing people, 24/7.
It's a normal job.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do, a report somewhere. And it's not just, it's everyone.
Yeah.
Take inventories, do stuff like that. Yeah. Clean stuff, like maintain. It's like it's
paint rocks.
Yeah.
whatever you fucking got to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's, my day-to-day as a motor team Marine was, maintenance on trucks, I was an operator, so I drove them, but, PMCS, preventive maintenance, checks and services, just making sure your rolling stock and your motor pool is working. That's my main point of focus every day. So it's checking trucks, oil, functions checks, and doing runs. So like we'll drive troops around to the range, pick up ammo, and do stuff like that. So, I did that for about 5-6 months with my buddy. We were the two young guys, so we were always getting the crap work. And when it came about 6-7 months mark in the fleet, we were still roommates, at that time. So it was pretty simple. And, it's got my friend since boot camp at that point. I was like, this is the longest tenured friend I've ever had. This
what do I do now?
Yeah. It's like, this ain't that bad.
No.
And, we get pulled into an office and they're like, hey, our unit's tasked with billeting or with a kind of like a special assignment for one Marine in our unit. They do like a rotation over at billeting. Okay. It's like kind of like just a random billet that they have to fill. And billeting is like you're checking in rooms and stuff like that for transient barracks. And they always need like some Marines to help out with that. And it's just kind of grunt work, but you're still in the same unit, but you're tasked out to someone else every day for, I think it's 10 months. And,
Jesus, that's a long time to do billeting.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It is. It's awful.
You get really good at it.
Yeah. You don't do it. Yeah. So it's very unique, but so this is a unique point in my career at this point. I was 19. My buddy was 24. And to drive ammo and to do that, you have to be over 21, ammo and fuel. And ammo and fuel drivers are a dime a dozen. Like or they're not a dime a dozen, but you need to have them. They're very important.
Right.
So if you're going to give up someone, I'd rather give the young kid up rather than the guy that can drive ammo and fuel. So they're like, Annarino, you're gone. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And they're like, well, you're going to be assigned to them. We're going to move you in a different barracks. So now I'm moved into a different barracks. And as a PFC at this point, now I'm living alone in my room, which if you're a PFC with your own room, that's very rare.
Yeah.
So I had my own room. I worked with a lot of civilians and I had a staff NCO that was an intel Marine that was under investigation for something. So the hodgepodge of Marines that worked there were usually like, besides myself, were in trouble. Because that's somewhere they can put them to where it's like, let's just get them away, out of sight, out of mind until whatever they're dealing with is over. But truck company was tasked with, you have to support one Marine to do this. So I'm with a bunch of Marines that have been NJP'd. So now they've got demoted. So I've had guys that have been in for 4 years at this point that are privates, and the mentality along with those types of individuals, I'm sure you've well aware.
Absolutely.
They don't care about anything.
No, you're in the land of misfit toys.
Yeah. So the morale is zero. They tell you this is the worst decision you've ever made is joining. So up to this point, I'm thinking this is awesome. Like I'm doing some great things here and like, okay, I'm starting to get my feet under me. And now I'm being told I wish I never joined. This is the worst thing ever. They're going to screw you over. That was what I was surrounded around.
Right.
So I did 10 months there. I still hung out with friends over in the other barracks, but I watched from afar as they did training. They kind of built bonds with one another. They did stuff and I didn't do anything. So, that was a unique time in my career. It wasn't fun.
No. And you know what? that sort of assignment can wreck a good Marine, right? If you're not like, if you don't have the resolve to do what you're supposed to do and understand, those people probably got themselves in trouble,
100%.
right? You could actually end up being one of the misfit toys.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And it's very little supervision over there at that unit.
Right.
So you can get in even more trouble because no one's watching you. There's no accountability. Luckily, I stayed with my buddy as much as possible and went to the gym with them, and I lost kind of like, a lot of people didn't know who I was when I came back to the unit. They're like, who's this new guy? It's like, I've been here a while.
I am not the new guy.
Yeah, it's like, don't put that name on me, but, right. I came back as a Lance Corporal, and fast forward the 10 months, it's really uneventful. You just kind of move furniture around. That's really all I did, and drive a Govey. But, I came back and I check into the company office as Lance Corporal Annarino. And I have this gunny there. He's a heavy Hispanic accent gunny. He's like, who the hell are you? I'm speaking to him in this window, this dispatch window. And I'm like, Lance Corporal Annarino. I'm checking back in. He's like, who? Who are you? They weren't aware that I even existed. Yeah. I wasn't on their morning report. And I was like, I've been here. I had explained to him. He's like, okay, come in. So I get dragged in the company office. I'm sitting in the hallway, and I hear one of the Staff Sergeant Bartles walks through, and he's like, ask me, who are you? And I tell him again. I'm like, okay, man, no one knows who I am. Someone has to know I existed. Right. And I can hear some rustling in the room, and they're like, I can hear some kind of rustling of like, yeah, he might be good. He might, I think I remember him, or so on and so forth. I'm like, God, what's going to happen? And at this point, I'm not like a brand wide-eyed, new Marine. I've been in the fleet now for a little over a year. Right. So, I kind of know a little bit about what's going on. And someone pops their head out and says, they asked me, are you retarded? I didn't know how to answer that. That's very blunt, I don't think I am. Not PC. And I'm right. No. And he's like, all right. So he goes back in. I hear some more things. He goes, can you drive? And I was like, yes. And they're like, can you drive a tactical truck? And I was like, yeah. And like, go back in. And I'm like, what is happening? And they're like, Staff Sergeant Bartles comes out. And he goes, do you want to go to Afghanistan? And I was like, yes. That's literally all I wanted. And
right, yes, please.
Just like you said, it's, my time over at Billeting could have ruined my career, because my time in the military, my experience, because if I was, if I stayed over there, let's just say if I got extended, I wouldn't have stayed in. I probably would never have deployed. I would never have had the career I would have. So everything happens for a reason. So I come back, and they had a couple individuals get hurt prior to their pre-deployment training on their roster. So they needed to have Marines that were of a certain rank to go on this next deployment to Afghanistan. And I was brand new. I was a Lance Corporal. I fell right in that block of how long you had left on the island, everything like that. So there's a time frame, because you can't deploy and then your contract in Okinawa run up. Right. So you might have to extend over there, or it's weird.
Well, I want to ask a question real quick. Yeah. So I just want to make sure I understand this. The prerequisites to go to Afghanistan is you can't be retarded and you have to be able to drive.
Yeah, that's pretty much
it. And you got to have enough time left.
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty awesome.
Or at least that's what it appeared like. So,
right.
So anyway, I got pulled into our CO's office, Captain Sanchez at the time, and I got pulled in there with Staff Sergeant Bartles and company guns, that Hispanic gunny, and they're all just grilling me. I have a gunny, a Staff Sergeant, and a captain in front of me, and I'm a new Lance Corporal. I'm just like, I've never been in this position where they're just talking to me like
a human.
Yeah, and they're kind of like, I don't know how to say, I'm trying to keep track of, yes, Gunnery Sergeant, yes, Staff Sergeant, yes, sir, yes, Gunny, yes. So, I'm messing up the ranks, and I'm all nervous. I just agreed to go to Afghanistan. I don't know what's going on.
Right.
So this is 2010. It's actually the beginning of 2011. And, so I get stuck with 3rd Platoon, and they just got back from a deployment to Korea. It's like a non-combat deployment, just training evolution, basically. And they were a tight group. They all basically came to the fleet within the same 5 months of one another, and they formed a platoon and they've been with each other for about a year and a half at this point. So they were the guys before myself and my buddy came in. They've been in the same group the whole time.
I'm seeing this trend in your life. I'm just like, there's this common thread in your entire life. Like, oh, I'm the outside guy once again.
Yeah. So I'm trying to find my place in this platoon of guys that are very tight.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have 2 NCOs in the platoon, only 2, a sergeant and a corporal, and all of us are lance corporals, and they are 2 very experienced combat vets. And, they ran us through the ringer. They held us to a high standard, because they were in Iraq in like 04, 05, in Motor T. And those guys are, you know, I don't know what time you were in Iraq.
I was there 06, 07.
Okay. So even then, I mean, that's peak times.
Yeah. It was not I don't think it's ever a good time to be there, but that was not a good time to be there.
And, you know, they were over there, you're losing a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, they knew what happens when you're complacent. So they made sure that we were not that. So, you know, I got a lot of experience in training. We did every single range we could ever do. We did they were very good at giving us what we needed to be successful. You know, and that truly changed the way I approached leadership down the road based on them. But, so we attached over to 1-3, which is over in Hawaii, 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines. We went over to Hawaii for about 8 months, pre-deployment training. So we did all there's a PTA is Pahakalua training area. It's like this tiny volcanic island. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
I have not.
It's a tiny island that is all volcanic rock. And
sounds like a great place to run.
Yeah, but it's at the top of a mountain. So it's very cold, and it swings very cold, very hot, very drastically, and it's beautiful. But if you ever do ranges and you have to get on the knee or the prone, it's volcanic rock. It cuts everything. So, you know, driving there, you know, we got to do a lot of cool ranges and whatnot, a lot of cool driving experiences in the middle of the night, night vision ops, stuff like that. And somehow I ended up finding myself, the person that I replaced was going to be their mine roller operator. So they didn't everyone kind of had their positions in the convoy that they kind of already predetermined when I joined the platoon. And that was a vacant spot. They were trying to test some guys out. I guess Sergeant Bazua at the time, he was our lead NCO and our NAV, our security team leader and everything. That was his driver. Like, he's going to be in the lead vehicle. He wants to make sure he has the right person.
Absolutely.
So he, long story short, you know, after months of training, he just kind of asked me, Annarino, get up front. We're going to see how well you drive. So a couple guys drove the mine roller. I guess he didn't like it. I drove it, and I guess he thought I was okay at it. So he said, you want to be lead vehicle operator? And I'm like, yes. He goes, you do understand what comes with this, right? Like, if you fuck up, someone's dying. I was like, yes, I want to do this. So I was like, okay. So I became our lead vehicle mine roller operator for the deployment, you know, so.
Wow. That's huge.
It is, you know, and it's scary when you think about it. Initially, I was a little nervous, but you know, you get so used to it and it just gets like muscle memory. But you know, we did a lot of ranges where you're finding IEDs in the ground and stuff like fake ones. And we did, a lot of training on the CMD, the compact metal detectors and stuff like that. And, we ended up going to 29 Palms to do CAX or ITX as they call it now, infantry training exercise. So that's about a month and a half long of just grueling training in the desert heat. In 29 Palms. Have you ever heard of that place?
I've seen all the memes.
Yeah, it's nothing.
All the memes.
I was stationed out there, my last duty station.
Yeah, no, thank you.
It's funny, but 29 Palms was just nothing, and it was hot, but we did a lot of cool stuff, and we had some good connections with the unit we were assigned with that allowed us to do a lot of the cool ranges that non-infantry was not able to do. So we shot a lot. We did a lot of shooting and moving. Our NCOs were really good at giving us every tool possible to be proficient if we ever needed it. So we could blend into any unit if we needed to. So, so we did that, and we ended up going to from Hawaii to Alaska, over to Germany, and then over to from Germany we went to Kyrgyzstan, And then you go from Kurdistan over to Camp Dwyer, Afghanistan, 2011.
That's good. That's a long train up too before you got there. I mean, you got a lot of really good training.
10 months.
So when you got there, you were as ready as you could be for what you were getting into.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, actually getting into deployment and kind of your experiences there.
Yeah. When we were flying from Kurdistan to Dwyer, usually, technically, you go from Camp Leatherneck, which is like the main base in Afghanistan, over to Camp Dwyer. So we landed there, and we just changed planes and got over. And you go from a C-5 from Kurdistan, which is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Then on C-5, it's massive. It's like, I can't believe this is a real plane. That's how big it is. And then you get to a C-130. You go from a C-5 to C-130, and you're on cargo net seats, and you're, they do a combat flight down into the AO on Camp Dwyer, and they don't really tell you. You just start pitching down, and you corkscrew down into the AO. So that was my first thought: is this supposed to happen? And are we getting shot down? Yeah, it's like I didn't know what to expect, and so we land. And, the first thing I realized, it's really bright, it's very sandy, and it smells like it bad. It's not a pleasant smell.
No,
there's something about the desert on a military base just stinks. So landed there, a lot of admin stuff. I just remember what are we doing? Like, I thought I was going to land and we're going to hit the ground running.
Right, we're going to get in trucks and go do our thing.
Start doing our thing. It's like, no. So we spent the first 2 weeks just checking in, waiting to get a unit to come pick us up and whatnot. So we're at the MWR and playing Xbox, and I'm just like, what? This is a weird deployment, quote unquote.
Right.
What are we doing? But yeah, so we ended up saying, okay, we're going to get helo inserted into our patrol base. And we're like, patrol base? I thought we were operating out of Camp Dwyer. And they're like, no, you are going to PB Amir. Patrol base Amir has a total of 50 people on it. 50.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a platoon of infantry and you have a platoon of motor T. We're the motor T guys. So prior to this, we actually were slated to go to Sangin. If you're familiar with Sangin was a brutal spot for motor T. The unit that we were going to be tasked with replacing was, I believe it was 1-5, and they ended up having 2 battalions there, two truck companies there, because they couldn't support it with just one because they kept getting blown up. Wow. So they went through 5 mine roller operators prior to our deployment, and we were slated to go. So when I was on pre-deployment leave, that's what we were training for, was Sangin. Sangin's in the mountains. It was a very dangerous spot. It was the most connected spot in Afghanistan at the time. So I know I'm backtracking a little bit. I forgot.
Oh, you're fine.
But when we were getting ready to go, there's like, okay, we're going to Sangin. We finish CAX, our pre-deployment training, and they change it at the end of CAX. Like, yeah, you guys are going to go to Syria, or going to go to Yemen on a MEU. So they changed our whole deployment. So we're like, we're going from Sangin, now we're going to Yemen? And I didn't even know where Yemen was. I was like, I think it's in Africa.
I can't find that on a map.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I think it's in Africa somewhere. But And I was like, I thought we were doing a combat deployment. And apparently Yemen, back in 2011, we were going to be the first boots on the ground in Yemen. So we were up in the air in Hawaii waiting to go on orders. We didn't know what we're doing. We're like, we just finished all of our training. We're going to deploy. I want to decide to get my plane back home to see family. Like at this point, I don't care where we're going. Just give me a date. So then it changed from Yemen. We're going to Garmshire, southern Garmshire. And it's basically at Garmshire, we're at the southern part in the desert where the Euphrates River goes down. It goes, our AO bordered Pakistan.
Okay.
And they were basically, our mission down there was to, one, stop the threat of IEDs by cutting off their supply lines. Pakistan was a heavy funnel for weapons and opium. So that was, our mission was to cut off those supply lines, stop the Taliban from being able to bring ammo and all the supplies they need to fight up north near Kajaki Dam and, like show Restrepo and everything. Yeah. That's up north. So we were trying to stop the flow of guns and everything that goes up north into the mountains. because that was the heavy Taliban fighting areas up there.
Okay. Yeah, I spent my whole deployment in northern Iraq. So,
Okay.
yeah, we're opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's amazing how different those two theaters are.
It is.
It's like two completely different wars almost.
Yeah.
You know? So, when we get there, we are getting told in our pre-deployment training, like, hey, now that we finally know where we're going, just let you know the unit before you, they found, like their unit alone found 250 IEDs. And like the whole unit found them. Yeah. And that's not including the ones that blew up.
Right.
So we're like, oh, okay. Because that's, in Afghanistan, that's the main threat is IEDs.
Right.
It's not like you're going to get fired at and shot at, but it's our ROE back then and our rules of engagement. It was very limited in what you can do. Mm-hmm. Like our ROEs and our ability to engage the enemy depended on a few things. One, you have to have a clearly identified enemy with a rifle pointed at you.
PID.
Yep.
Yeah.
You had to have nothing behind them. So you couldn't possibly shoot anyone that would be behind them. So basically, imagine them standing in the middle of a field. That's like the only time you can shoot. Mm-hmm. And then if they go into a home and shoot you and go into a house, you cannot shoot back. So you don't know if there's anyone in there.
That's pretty restrictive.
Very restrictive. Whew. And everything is mud huts.
Yeah.
Over there. There's no buildings. It's just mud huts. It's straight out of like the biblical days.
Right.
In Afghanistan.
Right. I think somebody once said, we're going to bomb them back into the Stone Age. And then when we got there, we realized they were already back in the Stone Age.
They're already there.
Yeah.
You can't go back any farther.
No, you can't.
It's pre-script, so yeah, it was unique. We go there and we fly into the patrol base. We turn over with 2-5. I end up seeing someone out of my MOS school in 2-5.
Wow.
So we helo in the middle of the day. I got some pretty cool pictures, like heloing in. We're in an Osprey, and the Ospreys at the time, if you're familiar with them, they in 2011 they had a lot of issues crashing.
Yeah, and they're not easy to fly.
No, and they're a very unique thing to fly in because like the G's go from up and down like vertical, and then they just turn to go left and right when that transitions into a plane.
Yeah.
So we end up inserting with an Osprey. We get off the helo. It's just we see our patrol base, and it's mud walls. It's like an old compound, mm-hmm. and it has one string of concertina wire over the wall that's maybe 8 feet high, and sandbags on either side that hold the concertina wire up. And it's basically our side is like a supply area where they just airdrop pallets of water, food, and ammo, mm-hmm. and we basically take that and deliver it to all the tiny remote patrol bases in our southern AO. So that was going to be our mission, is to keep the infantry units gassed, fed, and supplied.
You're their lifeline.
Truly. And you can't take large convoys down there because of the road situation. There's one main route. It's called Route Cowboys. That was a main MSR. Mm-hmm. Secondary road. It's a hard-packed, gravel, sandy, moon dusty road, but it had giant potholes in it. It had IED attacks all the time. That was your best route. And then you had all these tertiary roads that were just mud, dirt, big enough for maybe a white Toyota or like a motorcycle, So that was our AO. It's nothing. And then you had the Eastern Desert. That was just flat desert. So we check in, we start doing a left seat, right seat turnover, which basically you drive with someone from the unit you're turning over with. They put me since I was the lead driver, they didn't want me driving it. They want me to kind of see. So they put me in the lead gun. Yeah. So I'm rocking with the 50 cal, and their driver is from 2-5. And the navigator is Sergeant Bazua, my NCO. And he's basically, the driver knows where he's going. So basically Bazua is just kind of picking his brain, and they just put me in the gun my first trip. And I'm like, it's my first deployment. Like, what do I do if I see someone? I'm thinking like, oh my God, like this is it. Like I'm shooting everything that moves, I'm going to get shot at. And I see, cracks in the glass, from bullets, they've seen some stuff on this deployment.
Some stuff has happened.
Yeah. And I'm seeing like, oh my God, like this is shock, right? Like I am not prepared for this. So they, the driver gets in and he's like this crusty corporal, he's like at the end of his deployment. We all know what that feels like.
Oh yeah.
You're at the end of a
ready
deployment.
to go.
It's like, I have a week or two left. I am ready to get out of here. His plate carrier. When I was taking everything in, I was looking at their unit compared to us. Our camis looked clean. Theirs looked white. Because the the bleached camis from the sun is just, it melts the camouflage off your camis. So they're like a light tan white. All of them look like that. They just look grizzly and ruffled. Like you're in the middle of nowhere. We're on our patrol base.
Yeah.
There's no military grooming standard really. Like I said, there's no showers. We had a pump that pumped water from the wadi that we turned in, like the PVC pipe, and turned into a shower eventually. But it was like baby wipe showers for 10 months. Like you had piss tubes. There was like, it was remote. So
it wasn't the Holiday Inn.
No, it's, I hear about certain deployments. I'm like, man, that would have been nice. Like hindsight, that would have been really nice.
Right. You guys had a gym?
Yeah. We had the jailhouse gym with sandbags and whatnot that we used, but that was it. So I'm noticing like, man, these guys like really live in nothing. And then we notice, when they are going on convoys, a lot of these guys don't even wear side sappies. Like they just took out, because it's so hot.
Right.
We get there in about April, May timeframe, 2011, and it is hot. Like it is nothing compared to the heat I was used to. It's just bakes.
Yeah.
It's a dry heat, but there's no cover.
Man, when people say dry heat, I just want to punch them in the nose. I really do.
Like you're not swimming in like a humidity, like sweaty.
Right.
It's like you have an oven fan just blowing on you all day.
And your head is like in the oven.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to breathe because of that.
Yeah.
But, we're wearing these IMTV vests that we call them the HESCO barriers.
Yeah. That's what they look like.
It was so square. You looked like a brick. So we're wearing those, and that was our unit SOP. You had to wear them. They were brand new, and they were thick. They were just heavy. And we also got a plate carrier, and we weren't allowed to wear those apparently. Marine Corps, this is what I say. You're going to do it. I don't care.
Right.
And this is a battalion commander decision. So the unit we're replacing with has plate carriers, and they stripped them. So they're less than what the plate carrier even protects. Mm-hmm. He gets in, not wearing a skivvy shirt. He's just looking grizzly. He doesn't really care. He just seems very lackadaisical about everything. We're driving.
Go ahead and tell me I'm doing this wrong.
Exactly. A lot of times he's not even wearing his helmet in the cab. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm a young Marine on my first deployment. Every training I did, I was buckled up. I had everything. He never wore a seatbelt. No, nothing. Like, he just didn't care. Mm-hmm. So that was my shock when I got there. With the lead vehicle operator, you get out with a metal detector, and you have a sickle that you try to find wires in the ground. If you find something, one of my first convoys, one of my first memories, we get out and we see a infantry squad. They flag us down on our convoy, and they're like, "Hey, we found something up here. We're just checking it out. Just stand by and keep us in your bubble of your Thor system, like your anti RFID device that shoots out like electro signals on top of your truck.
Yeah.
Gives you basically a bubble, for the people listening that don't know, and it gives you a bubble to protect yourself for someone to use a remote control device to blow off an IED. Mm-hmm. So we get close to them, and I'm watching this grunt get out there. And the way we were trained to find these IEDs in the ground, we would lay flat on the ground and drag the sickle across the ground. So like if it blows up and out.
Yeah.
It gives you the best chance of survival. What do you think this grunt did?
Oh, I'm sure he's standing straight up.
Straight over it.
Oh, yeah.
And just digging,
there's got to be something here.
digging. And I can tell you, I was on the gun, just watching, providing overwatch, and my jaw dropped. I was just like, what did I, like, obviously, whatever I learned does not apply here. On pre-deployment training, I am in a different realm.
Yeah.
So in your first thought going to war is like, it's going to be very kinetic every day. Like, I'm going to war. It's different. So now once again, it's kind of like a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
It's kind of what my first thought was.
Yeah. The other thing too about training, and I learned this in our train up, is that the people who designed the training, I'm going to get shit for this, and the people who give the training are people who've never experienced combat,
or at least not recently.
No, in fact, we had a major that was like with us, and I'm not going to say his name, but he'll know who he is if he's listening. And he was the biggest jackass on the planet, and really didn't know what he was doing. And I remember he like made me get my whole company. So I had 217 dudes and dudettes, and he pulls, you're going to have a company formation. So I get my company formation. I turn it over to him, and he's like, this training you're doing is very serious. It's going to save your life. And he's given this really good speech. About halfway through it, he goes, "No, I've never been deployed, but my brother was, and he said it's pretty bad over there." And I was like, dude, you just lost all of us.
Yeah, you just lost everything.
Yeah, because now we know everything you say is BS.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the problem with some of the training is you have to have a foundation.
You do.
I get it. And that's why we train.
Yep.
But it'd be really helpful if you had people who knew what they were doing sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think all of us as a platoon were kind of shocked seeing that.
Yeah,
but,
I'll bet.
Your first 2 weeks is that left seat, right seat, and then they fly out, and it's like, okay, you're on your own. It's really rip the Band-Aid off. Let's go. And, and I'm driving a mine roller around, and one of the things that I remember most vividly my first couple weeks driving is one, the amount of people that are on the road I was not prepared for. And commanding the road as a motor T operator in a foreign country is very difficult because you're on the verge of hitting people on accident or hitting them on purpose. And you have to know when to do each, and you have to know when is it okay if I'm going to run over a car with someone in it. Like, at what point is my ROE, I'm going to control this road? Like, I don't care. I'm using this mine roller as a defensive device.
Yeah.
Came very close multiple times, and it's luckily our defensive posture was good enough to where it deterred them from doing anything. But, it was a learning experience right away because, when you train learning the road, commanding the road, and then also these white, yellow jugs that are on the side of the road, we were always told they're IEDs. They use jugs as, they hold HME, homemade explosives, like the aluminum nitrate that they use for the explosions. They put them in these yellow jugs, and everyone has yellow jugs everywhere. Everyone has them. They use them for water.
Yeah.
And they'll put them on the side of the road when they need to fill them up. So I would literally stop and I would get scolded. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, there's a jug. And like, just ignore it. I'm like, okay.
Whatever you say, boss.
Yeah, whatever you say. I guess that's not a threat. It's like, so those things you really had to kind of learn. You had to use your judgment a lot. And, a lot with Motor T is what I learned is when you're deployed in that kind of situation, you learn what your environment looks like and you memorize it. And when there's something that's different, when there's a discrepancy with what you normally see every day, that's when you need to start being alert. And it's amazing how, with our op tempo, which was insane on that deployment, we memorized everything. Like there's a couple stories of just very unique instances where if I went one way, slightly different, I probably wouldn't be here, just because of just my memorization of the routes. So, just for an example, we had about 240 days on deployment in combat zone. I wrote this down. We had 287 missions, and each mission averaged 8 to 10 hours. So there was multiple 3-day long ops that you're not sleeping.
Right.
It's, trying to drive and find IEDs when you're up for almost 72 hours is challenging.
It's like you're drunk.
It is. It is. You're drunk, and it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
I would literally pass out behind the wheel driving. Like, I just, from one, dehydration because it was so hot, and two, just exhaustion. That Sergeant Bazua, my buddy, he hit me in the helmet as hard as he can. Like, wake the fuck up.
Right.
And he just yell at you. I'm just like, okay. It's that was a constant thing. You're just going. But yeah, it was a fun deployment. We had a lot of close calls. I was able to find 20 IEDs while I was out there, with the CMD, with the metal detector. Your first one is scary. second one, it's, because you find these little discrepancies in the ground. It's like, that doesn't look right. And you're going 20, 30 miles an hour. It's amazing how you can pick things up because all you're doing is scanning the road, going, that speed, and you're also keeping track of what's in the buildings and what's, on the side of the roads and who's watching you. And if people are counting your speed and your location, if they're on the radio, you're doing a lot.
Looking for yellow jugs.
Yeah, looking for those mysterious yellow jugs,
Right.
But that was one of the things I'm proud of. I found everything that we were meant to find, and whatever we weren't meant to find never went off.
That's fortunate.
I know for a fact we rolled over IEDs because we would, on the BFT, the Blue Force Tracker,
Yep.
In our cab, you can track every unit, and then you get messages, and you'd see when units get hit, and we would pass, certain checkpoints, and not even 2-3 minutes later, another convoy would be right behind us, like an infantry, mounted platoon, and they'd get hit on the route we were just on. And you can know how long it takes for them to backlay an IED behind you. It's not long enough for them to dig it up well enough to get something that can take out a truck.
Right.
It's got to be a pretty significant sized IED. So that means a couple things. One, if it was a remote IED, maybe our Thor system worked, maybe. Or maybe, it just didn't work when we rolled over it, which is possible.
Right.
Or we saw what we needed to see and avoided it, and they didn't, so it's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. I truly believe that.
Well, I think that's something you learn in combat is like the whole notion of control is really just an illusion.
Yeah.
Because you can do every single thing right and still something bad's going to happen.
Exactly.
And you can be the guy with no plates, bleached uniform, no helmet, no seatbelt.
Nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen. It almost feels random.
It is. It's like Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Were you amazed at what you got used to?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the first time anything happened over there, you responded, like you said, the first time you found an IED, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've done this. I hope my training was right.
Yeah.
But by number 15, it's an IED. But for someone who hasn't had the experience you've had, they're like, what? Like all 20 of them would have been terrifying, but you get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really weird. The first one, I was puckered up.
Yeah.
As hard as.
Did you lay down? And
No, I didn't. But,
I had to ask.
I was very, very cautious. I'm trying to pull slowly and thinking, because, what you do is basically, if you're not familiar with it, if you find something, an IED, I use poker chips, these little plastic poker chips to mark it. So you take your metal detector and it would make a beeping sound when you found something.
Right.
And it's like it gets higher pitched the more metallic the signature. So, you find its point closest to you. You go north and south, and then you find east and west. And you kind of mark the east, west, and southern point of where that is on the ground. You never want to go north, because if you try to throw it and you miss and you land on the pressure plate, you don't need to find what's furthest away. Just find what's closest to you, right?
Right.
And we use this. So my job isn't to blow them up, to detonate them. My job is to locate them and then identify them for EOD to come and blow them up place. But for EOD, they will not come out there if they think there's an IED. You have to positively identify when there's something there. And even then, they are waiting 10 to 13 hours on average for them to get out there. It's a hike for them. So anyway, when you locate it, then you use the sickle to drag on the outside of the box to try to find a wire that leads to said pressure plate. A lot of times you go out there and you think you found something and it's just a rock. And there's metallic signatures in rocks. And if it's a big enough rock, it'll ping. And you get close to where that is with a sickle. Once you can kind of start telling when something's not a metallic like plate and when something's a rock, it has sporadic beeps, and it might just be there's metallic parts of the rock in there. And when it's a solid ringing sound when you hit something that's a pressure plate with copper wire in there for a connection. So, you get good at understanding when something's, not supposed to be there, not natural.
Yeah, you sort of learn to discern.
You do.
You don't.
With some beeps.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to call everything an IED.
No.
But we're not going to call nothing an IED.
First 2 months, you think everything is.
Oh, yeah.
And then towards the end, you're like, can we go around it?
Yeah. Towards the end, you're not wearing sappy plates and your friggin' uniform's all bleached out. And you're tired.
Yeah. And like the more times I did it, and the more I understood the AO, I got really good at doing it to where, I could spot, we might have found something on the ground, but let's investigate around the sides of the road rather than just going right to there. And a lot of times I don't even need to use my sickle. I can see wires coming out the side of the road. And it's like, okay, well, I know something's there. Like, I don't need to. I'll throw a spotter on there because I know it's in that general direction. When we would call EOD, and I'd say, it's about 5 feet north of that spot. Just, you'll find it. Mm-hmm. It's right there. I'm not going to put myself at risk to find it. Like, I know it's there. So, that's helpful. It's helpful for them too. But, so, we did that. And a lot of times, finding these IEDs, you see people standing watching you because they'll put fake ones out and see how you react. They're testing your SOPs. So, there's a lot of being, holding an aggressive posture. There was one moment I remember specifically, not IED related, but we went to do a resupply down Route Redskins, which was a very, very bad route. A couple weeks prior to this event, we go to resupply this base, and there was a tiny little guard shack at the end of the road because there was like a main. This main road is not really a main road. I don't think I could drive a quad down this road, but we did it in trucks, and it was hard. Yeah. But the main road led to a tertiary road that's like a footpath, and they had a guard shack there. And we would drop off supplies at that guard shack, and they would take like a gator, like a 4x4 side-by-side Polaris gator, and they'd pick it up and shuttle it back and forth. Well, we go up, and this guard shack literally is blown to pieces, and we could see it smoking. We come around this corner, and we're like, that's not supposed to be there. And we go and investigate, and there's an AMP, like an Afghan national policeman. He just got blown up by an IED. They just did a change of guard, and in the change of guard, by the time they changed over, they put like a anti-personnel mine or some small IED in there, blew him to pieces.
Wow.
And this guard shack is just, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
There's nothing left. Like, he's pieces, so this is 2 weeks prior. Mm-hmm. So we get up there and we resupply them. We drop everything off, and we're going to turn around, and where you have to turn, it's like this field that normally we've had no issues with. We don't really drive in it, but we're like, we had our wrecker, like our recovery vehicle with us, and that day, for some reason, and which is a good thing we had, but we go to turn, and one of our MRAPs gets stuck. So it gets stuck mid-wheel well in mud. Like, it looks hard, but it's all mud underneath. Yeah. So now we're in a really bad spot, and our truck is stuck. Like, we cannot get it out. And you're not going to leave a vehicle behind, right? So it's like, I'm staying here until we get it out. So we end up getting a cordon, we end up setting it up, and you can start seeing, when we're getting the cordon set up, there's more people coming around. Mm-hmm. And there's like all these little huts and mud walls and compound walls, and you start seeing heads pop up, and like, okay, there's kids playing in this little wadi, this little river has this little waterfall, and there's kids playing and jumping in it, and we're like, okay, so the kids are here, we're fine. That's what we've known. Mm-hmm. It's kids are around, you're good. And we get the wrecker out to go pull them out, and the wrecker gets stuck. It falls through. And, we have our wrecker operators, our recovery guys, they're walking out, wading in this mud, hooking it up, and they come out, and they're like, I can't get me out. Like, yeah. So now we have, and in MRAP, if you're not familiar, they just have an awful transmission system. Their torque in an MRAP is very bad. Mm-hmm. So if you're ever trying to climb a hill or anything, MRAP's the worst vehicle to be in. It's a safe vehicle, but you can't see anything, and you can't get out of anywhere fast. So I chose to drive a 7-ton as my lead vehicle. They gave me the choice of an MRAP, and I'd rather be able to see and get rid of some of the protection. Right. I'd rather be able to see when I'm going to actually go over, which ultimately I still stand by that. But I set up my vehicle cordon and the oncoming road, and I start seeing the village elders, like these old guys, come out and starting to wrangle up kids to get them out. And that's when I started, that's starting to not look good. This isn't normal. Usually they know we're not going to do anything to the kids. That's when the warning signs start showing, and I yelled at my gunner to get out our MREs, and we're keeping the kids close to us by giving them MREs or just baiting them in. They're not going to do anything. It's one thing with Afghanistan, I think it's different than Iraq. Afghanistan, they're kind of homeboys. Like a lot of the people that we were fighting against were from those areas.
Yeah.
So they cared about their families a lot of times. I feel like Iraq might have been a little different. It's more collateral damage because I think they had a lot of foreign fighters there, right?
Yeah, and when we were there, it was during the surge, so they were pushing everyone out of those southern areas, and they were coming right up into the northern area. Yeah, they've got no ties there. They don't really.
They don't care who.
No.
As long as they kill someone.
As long as they kill some Americans, they don't. Yeah, they're fine.
They're everyone else is like a martyr kind of thing. So
exactly.
For us, keeping the kids around was priority. So we baited these kids in. In hindsight, I thought, man, that's kind of messed up. But ultimately, war is war. It's
right.
We're not going to hurt the kids, to our knowledge. So we kept them around. We baited them. The old village elders are getting pissed. You can tell they're yelling at them, trying to come close to us. We're yelling at them back, like get back. I don't care about the kids. I want the kids to stay. But the elders, I'm keeping at a distance because you don't know what they're having under their blouse or anything. And Bazua, he was with me, and we're taking the CMDs and going up and down the road, just setting up a cordon, just making sure there's nothing sitting there. And we kind of turn back. We go down about 50 meters and turn back. And I kind of glance back, and there's some people around him that he was walking back towards, and they're kind of following him. And I kind of tell him, like, hey, just keep an eye out who's behind you and whatnot. And he was talking to him, trying to tell him, like, just stay back. They want to get through. They had to go around this road. And we're like, no, you're not going anywhere, and they're kind of getting a little agitated. And I started seeing some guys with buckets and shovels walking from over this hill, from the compound, over the crest of the hill. We couldn't see where they were at. And I yelled at Bazua. I was like, hey, this is not good. This is very not good. We have kids who are going away. We have guys with digging utensils, like digging up the road that we have to go out. We need to get out of here ASAP. So while I'm dealing with Bazua and with these other guys, I turn and there's a guy right behind Bazua and he has a knife out. And I bore punch him as hard as possible right in the sternum. And I take the butt of my rifle, I punch him right in the chest. I don't know why I didn't just shoot him. I don't. It's just a kind of reaction.
Right.
He wasn't like about to swing or anything, but he had a knife out. And I'm sorry, you're not going to be standing around. He could have been a farmer just doing something. I don't know. But I punched the shit out of him. And he was gasping for air. We had an interpreter with us, and he grabbed him up and was kind of yelling at him. And, the guy couldn't breathe. And, immediately that was like, okay, this is bad.
It's time to get out of here.
Like, I had justification to shoot this guy,
right.
And that was my first moment ever having justification. Like, I could have killed someone right here. So, we start getting back in our truck. We don't leave the trucks, and we finally get it out, So now we're trying to get out of here, and we going down this road, and I'm like, oh, there's something in this road up here. Like, I know it. Ultimately ended up not blowing up. I wasn't going to get out because it was too much of a hazardous area to like try to investigate. We just had an IED go off 2 weeks ago. So that was like our first harrowing moment of like, this could have been a very bad ambush. We were stuck. We couldn't do anything. And it's compound walls are all around us. Like, they could have done anything to us at that point. It's amazing how things turn. Like, you could tell there's like a sense of when something's going to happen. But yeah, that was the first experience over there where I was like, okay, we just avoided something could have been very bad.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know that when you go to the market and there's no one there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The bazaars. It's like,
drive past the college and there's no students.
Yeah.
They
know something.
Yeah. They know something that you don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to trust your gut when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a 243-day deployment.
It was about 240 days. We were in our patrol base. I was there for about 8.5, 9 months.
Okay.
I was advon going in, and I was the last one to come out because we did turnover. So they wanted their lead vehicle guy to come out last. We had a couple kinetic, instances on the deployment, but we had one instance where we got attacked at night. I was working out in our our gym, and I have my little headphones on from the PX truck. I'm jamming out. I see a wall of red tracers over our head. It's I don't hear anything, so I just hear my music. I take them off, and I see the zips and the clicks, and I'm like, oh God, what's happening? And I look over, and I just see a wall of red tracers coming over. And as I hear yelling, and we just get on the wall. Everyone's in silkies, your short shorts, your boots, and your nods, and you're just engaging targets out in the field. And we ended up, I guess there was 5 or 6 fighters that got taken out, but the A&P police that was on the southern guard post is funny. It's a funny story. You always find this humor in like bad times.
You have to.
This A&P guy, he had a PKM machine gun, and he just cyclic. He just laid on the trigger, didn't let loose once. And I just remember on the radios, you can hear our guard radios. They're just yelling out like, "Who the hell is shooting? I didn't give that order." Like they're just yelling. It's like, we can't control him. It's A&P. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just shooting everything, But it's like, that was pretty funny. But our biggest loss that we had, it wasn't with our platoon. It was with one of the infantry squads that we supported. Excuse me. We had a cop rankle. It was in the southern spot, about probably a 45-minute drive for us. It's one of the main supply hubs. They had a big LZ, so it supported the southern spots that were very remote. So they would rotate platoons out to the southern spots because it was so remote. You need to like rotate in and out. It's bad. Yeah. It's not really livable longer than a month before you have to kind of resupply everything. So I got to know Nicholas Ott pretty well through like working parties. Every time we drop off water and everything, it's like you just have the grunts come over and help you out, and you end up just getting to know people, And I knew him for quite a few months at this point, towards the end of the deployment. This is in August, and we come down, and we know, when you get red air, that call sign across, it blocks all communication, blocks everything. We get a red air the week prior. And you never know what happened. It could be anything. Could just be something in a different AO, something. Well, anyway, once we finally get clearance to go outside the wire, we end up going down to Rankle. I'm like, where's Ott? And like, man, you didn't hear? He got taken out, and he got blown up by an IED. Kind of bad circumstances, but like I mentioned before, they took gators to go pick up stuff. 'Cause it was so remote. Like, it's better to do it in like a Polaris gator than on foot. So Lance Corporal was driving out, and they hit a toe popper in the gator. Did no damage to the gator, miraculously, but the Lance Corporal got spooked, and he's like, "I'm not doing this. Like, someone else drive." So Ott said, basically, "Don't be a pussy. I'm going to do it." So they go, grab the stuff, and they're coming back on their route back. And not even 10 minutes later, they hit a 30-pound IED. And a 30-pound IED with a gator, there's nothing left.
Oh.
They found his helmet about 100 meters away. So like I said, we're at Rankle. I'm like, it's sinking feeling. You're just like, I just was talking to him a week ago. This is like the first major loss we had.
Yeah.
And they point over, and they have his gator on the base. And then the next week we had to go take it back, and they put it on my truck, and it was tough. That one was tough.
Yeah.
Seeing his gator getting lifted on the back of my truck, and then you can still see everything in it. It was pretty gruesome.
Oh yeah.
Seeing that. The week prior, we just had a village elder that we were pretty close with in the local area. He got gutted. He was laying on a table. When we went to another patrol base, it's just like, I was just talking to him. He was always around the base, and, we always stop in there and help out the kids and stuff. And he's lying there with his guts out. It's just like, it's a brutal place. Brutal place.
Yeah. I mean, if ever that phrase, you're not guaranteed what's going to happen tomorrow. No. I mean, that's the place.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, one day you're talking to somebody, and the next day they're just not there anymore.
No. And seeing that, those experiences, seeing how brutal of a place that is, seeing the hatred, and you can tell when someone hates you.
Yeah.
Right away. You get that feeling. You can tell those people that usually have that look on them are usually the people you're fighting against over there. That's what you kind of gather. I'm sure you guys saw that as well. It's like, there's a difference between a civilian and someone who's like, they look at you a certain way, like they want you just to not be on this earth anymore. Seeing those people, how much they hate you, and truthfully, what you go over there mentally to do is like, I want to make this place better. Mentally, that's what we all went over there doing, thinking. And I truly think we made a difference on our time there. We saw, you build relationships with people.
Right.
And, seeing that, and then seeing just the brutal loss of life, and just seeing how brutal they are to their own and to their kids, and like seeing these kids just living in poverty. And, it got me to really think about a lot of things over there. It really, really made me question a lot of things of religion and stuff, like personally for me.
Yeah.
I was raised very Christian and very, very strict, Sunday school, everything. And it's like, you see that, you grow up from that, and then you go total opposite of, this is unadulterated. Like, these people have nothing, and this is where we're at, and we are trying to help these people, and they would rather themselves suffer than get help.
Yeah.
And then you see the dynamic of, if they help us, they're going to be killed. And if they help them, they're going to be imprisoned. You feel awful for them, and that's, I really struggle with that. And it's, you start to understand, and then you start thinking like other conflicts, like Vietnam, like you start thinking like, these are the things I thought about for years.
Yeah.
It's like, you start to understand, there's more casualties than just like the war fighters in war. And it takes a toll on everyone in that area. You want to avoid that as much as possible.
Absolutely.
It's truly devastating, but yeah, that was kind of our deployment for the most part. It was a high op tempo, exhausting work. We had some losses over there, but we ended up doing a lot of good stuff.
I think that's what you have to hold on to, really,
Yeah.
is the stuff that made a difference, that was good. And sometimes it's hard to find, but it's there if you look for it. I think
I grew a lot. I grew a lot over there. I changed.
Yeah.
Definitely. My mom even said when I got back, like, you just look different. It's like, you mature.
Yeah.
I came back when I was 21. I went there when I was 20. You are a different person.
I feel like it took 10 years off of me.
Yeah.
When I look at the kids that I was deployed with, when they came back, they just didn't look like kids anymore.
No.
It was completely different. So,
yeah.
So when you left, did you go back to Okinawa then?
Yeah.
Is that how that works?
Yeah. So
I was curious.
Yeah. So
Did you work at billeting when you got
No, I did not. So, we flew directly to Kyrgyzstan. And then, since everyone was going to Hawaii and we went to Japan, they went west and we went east. So we had to fly over China and Russia. And so it's kind of funny, but I took a bunch of NyQuil prior because I was like, it's such a long flight.
Dude, that's such a Marine thing to do. Because when we came back from, I don't mean to interrupt you, we came back from Iraq, man, it was like the Marines were doing NyQuil shots. And it was the Marines doing it. Anyway, so you take all this NyQuil.
Drugging ourselves up just to go to sleep. Yeah. So I take a ton. Like, I took like 2 of those little packs of 4. I was like, I'm knocking myself out.
Right.
So I was out. I woke up when we were taking off, or I went to sleep when we were taking off, and I woke up when we were landing. And I'm like, oh, thank God, it's so good to be home. We're going to go back to the barracks. And I look out the window and we're back in Kyrgyzstan. I'm like, what just happened? And apparently we got denied clearance to fly over China and Russia. We had to get clearance, and we were a military contracted aircraft. You fly those civilian air.
Yes.
Apparently there was a clearance issue, and they said, if you continue, we're going to restrict your airspace. We're going to shoot you down, basically, probably. Right. And so we had to turn around, go back. So we had another 2 weeks in Kyrgyzstan. We're just like, are you kidding me?
No.
Yeah, it's like, I just want to go home. And Kyrgyzstan's not a fun place to be. It's boring. It's Air Force Base, like close to Russia. It's just gray and Eastern European. We ended up flying great the second time. And, we land back in Oki, and, you kind of they give you, I think, a couple weeks, kind of detox a little bit and just kind of do some BS work. And you're just keeping busy, kind of. They don't expect you to do anything. And a lot of time, like after you get back, especially in Okinawa, it's weird because your contract in Okinawa kind of ends. And a lot of guys end up either they're EASing, like the end of service, like their times either come to an end, they don't want to re-enlist, or they re-enlist and get a new duty station. Or a third option, you can extend in Okinawa if you had some time, if you want to re-enlist, and you can extend there for another 1.5 years. So I was already there for 2 years at that point, getting back. I was close to being a corporal, so I was close to picking up. I decided, I'm going to re-enlist. Ended up picking up corporal pretty soon after that. Then I decided to re-enlist, and then I stayed over there. They gave you kind of like a little kicker to re-enlist with a 30 days of leave or a free plane ticket to Seattle round trip. So that way, that's
a huge bonus.
Yeah. So I chose that. So I went home for like a month, free leave, and got a ticket, and re-enlisted and stayed over there another 1.5 years. And I was an NCO over there. So it's like a little different experience, but a lot of the guys rotated out, and I was me and like maybe one other guy was the most experienced people over there, in our company at the time, because everyone rotated out. So we're the two kind of combat vets in our unit. Everyone else was not deploying after that. We stopped tagging in with 3rd Marines deploying. So, we did a lot of training over at Mount Fuji, mainland Japan, and, being combat vets, we're leading all the training. Just kind of like what you said, you want to have experienced people leading it. The year prior we were in Afghanistan in a pretty kinetic area, and, we led a lot of mount training, a lot of urban training, a lot of IED finding. And, my personality up to that point was not a leader, like a vocal leader. I was more of like, I'm just going to do everything I can to the best of my ability. And usually that means people at that point kind of just like knew I was very trustworthy. Yeah. And when I became an NCO, I started trying to be something like the very vocal guy, and I just wasn't that. I really kind of started to struggle to learn, what being a true leader and an NCO is. That last 1.5 years really taught me a lot. But yeah.
Yeah. And if you're trying to be that vocal leader and you're not, then you really look like you're trying to be a vocal leader and you're not. Yeah.
It doesn't come off as genuine. And, it took me some time, and I had a really good mentor at the time say, and it's something I still learned I still follow to this day. And I told a lot of my junior Marines this down the road, but was, your leadership ability it's like a toolbox. You're going to take the tools you need from someone you learn, someone you have, good or bad. You're going to take them and put them in that toolbox. And that's how you're going to shape your toolbox. So, if you have a leader, I've had many leaders that sucked. I hated them. Like, I just did not like them as people, let alone a leader. Right. And that's in and out of the military. But there might have been one thing that they did well. I'm going to take that and use that in the future at some point. I'm going to remember that. And you also want to remember the things they did really poorly, because you can know this did not work. I'm going to use this down the road and not do this, or know when to identify when someone is doing this,
How not to do it is a great lesson as well.
It's a great lesson. Yeah. So, I think I used that, and that really shaped me into the person I am today. I used that years later when, now becoming a father, I use that thing, that, experience and that mindset when trying to shape how to be a dad. Yeah. And that's what I kind of do, is like, what didn't work? Like, well, I'm going to do the opposite of that. It's, exactly. Do what I needed, do what I wanted to be and what I wanted to have as a kid, be like that for my kids. So that's my goal. But yeah, it's after, going back to that, it's after my 1.5 years there, I became much more of a leader at that point. I think from what I was, I really understood that. So they gave me a small little story. They gave me a platoon of my time left in Okinawa was very short. I only had like 6 months. So they didn't want to give me some major platoon to run and to do a pre-deployment training or anything like that, because I didn't have the time. So they gave me kind of the broke dick platoon. That's what we like to call it.
The land of misfit toys.
Yeah, again. The land of misfits. So they gave me a lot of people that were hurt,
I haven't heard broke dick in a long time. I'm just going to say that. So like that brings back a lot of fun memories.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
it's they gave me the quote unquote hurt Marines or the people that are like in trouble or, the guys that are still there. And
the sick, lame, and lazy.
Yeah.
The ash and trash.
There's all kinds of. It's like, it's just the lame ducks.
Yeah.
I got that. And I had to take them to Mount Fuji a couple times. And it's like trying to wrangle in these misfits. It's a nightmare. And one thing I learned with doing that is they don't care about your rank. They don't care about who you are. They care about, like, they've had bad experiences with the military up to this point. A lot of them.
Yeah.
They want to know you're not going to be one of the people that gave them a bad experience. So a lot of times what I learned was what's better is to kind of listen to what they need. If you're giving an order or giving like, hey, we have to do this, if you know it's going to suck, give them the what's in it for me. Like, listen, I know this sucks, but if we do this, we can do this. Or do this, I can get you this. Like, that is what I'm trying to do. Like, this is the why behind it. And I think a lot of Marines up, in my time up to that point, never cared about giving you the why. It's like, you're going to do as I tell you because this is what I'm going to give you.
Because you're a Marine.
Yeah, this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Instant obedience to orders. I deviated from that, and I realized that's not the best way to lead. Truly, it's not. And I think Marines appreciate, just people in general, I'll say not just Marines, but people in general appreciate, if I'm telling you to do something, give me the why. And I think the new generation that's coming in to the military, you have to give them the why. Like the Gen Zs, and that's, I got out in 2020. So this is like kind of the initial push of this newer generation of kids that questioned, why am I doing this? And that it was a clashing point for a lot of senior leaders is, I don't care if you want to know why. You're doing this because I'm telling you. And that's, you lose a lot of people that way.
Right.
You lose the buy-in.
Well, and I think for like senior leadership too, when someone wants to know the why, they're not questioning your authority. They want to know why. And they'll do it even if they don't agree with the why. And I think there's this fear that if I tell them the why, they're not going to agree with it. Now I have this other problem. No, they might not agree. They just want to know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
I completely
In
agree.
fact, I think those are the people you want.
Yes.
Because they're going to make you think about what you're doing before you do it.
Or they're going to offer you a suggestion on how to better improve your initial plan and how to approach something.
Yeah.
And once you're willing to be a little more humble with yourself and self-reflect a little bit and say, like, listen, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. And this is our best approach based on the information I have. And if they say, well, I don't think that's the greatest idea, well, that's fine. You don't have to take it as they're challenging you.
Right.
Take it as, okay, well, how would you do it? And I'll tell you if that's feasible. And here's why. But you work together as a team. And I use that approach with this platoon, for example. And it's amazing what happened. They got off light duty. They started performing, and they just acted different. Like they were probably one of my best platoons I had ever. They would do anything. They would do anything for you because they bought in and they knew you had their back, and they knew that you were giving them something because you needed them to do it, and it was for their best interest.
Right.
It wasn't something just like, I'm just messing with you type thing. And that's what a lot of these guys and girls had at that point. So yeah, we ended up beating out a lot of platoons in training. We ended up performing way higher than a lot of the full functioning deploying platoons. And it's like, I have people that are getting ready to get out. They don't give two shits how well they perform at this point. Like they're counting the days down, but they're out here kicking ass, so that opened my eyes a lot. And then after that, that was when I had to choose, what am I doing next? So I re-enlisted and chose to figure out, okay, if I'm going to make this a career, possibly, what's my next step? I had a good mentor that said, like, listen, if you're going to re-enlist, don't just go to another unit. They wanted me to get promoted to sergeant. They thought I could do a meritorious promotion. So they said, listen, you need to win this meritorious promotion board. And I had about a year left. Win this meritorious promotion board, and then request to go on your special duty assignment, which in the Marine Corps, if you want to go and be a staff NCO, you have to do a special duty assignment. So that's drill instructor, embassy duty, or recruiter. So I was like, okay, they challenged me to do this. Someone I trusted challenged me to do this, and I'm going to do it. And it ended up being Gunny Bartles at the time. He got promoted, but he's like, listen, you're going to do this. Like, you can do this. So I'm like, okay. I've never had a meritorious promotion at all. And it was like it was a performance board.
Yeah.
So it was like PFT, CFT, all being observed by a board of people. Then it was like, you had to give a presentation. You had to do sword manual. Yeah, it was a gauntlet. It was
a whole stinking book, right? Like everything.
We had to drill with the sword and like perform with the platoon, and it was unique. I studied so hard for this, and I tried so hard. I was competing against a lot of friends of mine, which kind of sucks. Cause it's like, if I beat you, that's like, I'm your senior leader now. It's like, a lot of these guys, I was one of the most junior corporals that was on it. So I felt bad.
It's like the Hunger Games.
I know. I felt awful doing it. It's like, I was never like some physical specimen that was like, I'm going to run a perfect score. Like, I was just solid. It was very solid physically, like performance wise, always high first class PFT, CFT. But, when it came down to performance of your job, I was very good at that, and knowledge wise and leading. I was a very good leader at that point. I felt very confident, let's just say. Maybe not a good leader. I think you can always improve, but I was very confident in my leadership abilities.
Right.
And that's one thing I didn't have growing up, was confidence in myself. And I think at that point in my life, coming off deployment, getting this turnaround of this platoon, having that feedback from them made me feel really confident in myself. And I ended up winning the board, got promoted to sergeant in 3 years, just under 3 years. My time in, that's fast.
That's really fast.
Fast as hell.
Yeah.
And at the time when it happened, I was like, the way people view you now you're this guy that got promoted super fast. Now it's like, okay, well, this guy's a kiss ass.
Right.
So you think that's the perception, right? Anywhere. It's going to be the perception. So you have to prove them wrong. So now everywhere I go, they're going to ask, man, you're really young. How are you a sergeant? It's like, oh, I got meritoriously promoted. Under 3 years? Like, that's insane. It was like 2 years, 11 months.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I meritorious board. I thought I'd be on it, and I won it. And they're like, that shouldn't happen. Now they're thinking like, you're just a kiss ass. You have to outperform people. And that's what I did. That was my thing. I had to be like that. And I chose recruiting duty. When I had to pick time, everyone told me I needed to be a drill instructor. All my chain of command was all drill instructors, and they hate each other. Recruiters are these disgusting fat bodies that those are civilians in uniform, and
right.
You want to be a drill instructor. This is what you want to do. And I almost went that way. And I had a staff NCO that I worked for directly and as a dispatcher for a while. And he's a very, very kind person. He's very smart, intelligent, just a quiet guy. He's like almost a guy that you can see, like if he just turned into a civilian tomorrow, he'd be a great civilian. Like you'd never tell he was a Marine if he just put on civvies and walked out the door. You'd never tell. He still lives in Japan, but he was like, you know what? I learned more as a recruiter than my entire time in the Marine Corps is as far as leadership and my business sense and how to walk and talk as a professional.
Right.
He goes, what are you going to learn as a drill instructor? To yell at trees, to like yell at stuff, yell at people? Who would you rather work for? Someone that can be intelligently speaking to you and be able to give their opinion, intellectually. Like that's who you want when you get out. He goes, always think of what happens if this doesn't work out. You always want to have a fallback. So, and he also said, not to mention the ribbon or the recruiter ribbon sits higher on your ribbon stack than all the other SDAs. And so he's like, it's harder. Yeah. So I chose recruiting, and I got mocked a little bit by my other chain of command, but recruiting, I went out recruiting and requested to come back out to recruiting station Detroit back home. I thought that'd be a cool place. And they put me up in Richmond, Michigan.
What the hell's Richmond, Michigan?
31 in Gratiot.
Oh, okay.
It's like Chesterfield, just keep going up Gratiot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing up there. It's a 3 square miles around if you took around the whole town. But yeah, I had I lived in Chesterfield. I had Lance Cruz North, Anchor Bay High School, and New Haven as my high schools. And I was there for 3 years from 2013 to 2016.
Yeah, and I don't know about your experience, but like they give you an office, a car, a credit card, and you hang out with high school kids.
It's
and
weird.
If you do it right, when you go to that high school, the doors open up for you.
Yep.
They treat you well.
Yep.
It's a really good experience. And I'm just wondering, was that your experience?
Yeah, I replaced a recruiter that did not do a very good job. He was underperforming recruiter. It's weird. When I checked into recruiting duty in my office, I saw one of the recruiters in my office when I was recruited. He became a career recruiter.
Yeah.
And he was an 8412 as a career recruiter. So he was our 8412 at RS Detroit. So I ended up working for him. He's like, this is the weirdest thing in the world. Because 3 years ago, I was a poolee.
Yeah.
I was in the delayed entry program.
Yeah. You were lower than snail shit.
Yeah. I was a chubby little kid, the civilian that he remembered because I would work out in his office all the time. And he's like, Annarino? And it's like, yeah. Oh my God. Gunny Laundra. It's so weird, seeing them.
Yeah.
But it was a fight. It was an uphill fight for the first year. It's long hours. I would leave at 5 a.m. to go to MEPS, and then I'd come back after doing interviews and picking up kids and whatever. And I'm back at 10:30 at night. Sometimes you're working 15, 16 hour days and you go home to nap and come back.
Right.
So, it was very hard. I think that was probably one of the hardest times in my military career was on recruiting. Mm-hmm. More than anything I've ever done, that was the most challenging because I feel it takes you out of your comfort zone,
way out,
which is the military.
Yeah.
And now I'm a salesman, and
right.
I'm selling. I'm
selling an idea.
Yeah, like I'm not selling you a product.
Right.
Like I'm selling you an idea that could possibly get you killed.
Yeah.
And you're going to take you away from your family.
The other thing too about recruiting is it's very rewarding, right? Like if you look behind me, my first year out, recognized by the Michigan House of Representatives for recruiting excellence, right? But that doesn't matter. It's always, what have you done for me lately?
Yep.
Right. So you can put in 20 guys in 1 month, but you have a week.
This is the next month. What do you got?
Yeah. What are you doing this month? What are you doing this month?
Yeah.
So yeah. And you're right. It is hard because you're selling people an idea. You're not selling them something that they can touch or feel.
Yeah.
And part of it is you're selling them on your story too. I mean, right.
Yeah. And I tell you what, I think my story coming up as a kid, I used that. I told them exactly who I was and where I came from.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, this is what I did. I was being a sergeant under 3 years, like showing them the possibilities of being able to do that. Those things do help, and I was younger. I think I was 23 when I went out there. Yeah. I was 23. So when you're 23 and you're talking to a 16 to 18-year-old kid, you have way more in common than someone that goes out there when they're a staff sergeant who's like in their 30s.
Yeah.
You're trying to, I don't know what's cool now. I knew we were very similar in age. So I understood kind of how they acted, how they talked, and it was helpful. But yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience because, you can't rely on anyone else. It is you alone.
Right. And it's cutthroat too. Even if there was someone else to rely on, you're on your own because everyone's worried about themselves at that point.
And it's designed to be that way. It's not even that it's not even that you get those people out there. It turns people to be like that because I would love to help you, man. But if I help you and I don't meet my numbers, like I'm screwed.
No one cares that I helped you.
No.
You did help each other. I mean, I will be honest. We did help each other, but not to our own detriment.
I wouldn't go out of my way to cause myself to miss a timeline or, a number for me to help you, but I would help you if I could.
Right.
If I was ahead, we gave people away. It's like trading people.
I got to ask. So I recruited in the Navy. You recruited in the Marine Corps. Did you learn this little trick early on? I'm going to make goal and I'm going to maybe throw a couple extra bones in there, but I got 10 guys and I'm stringing them along because I know next month's coming up pretty damn quick, right? Like the first couple of months, you're like, pew, 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 pew. You're putting in tons of people and the people who are watching, they're like, oh, he's going to learn this lesson.
It's blown slow and quick.
Yeah.
No, I had, you have those calendars on your desk. On the bottom of my calendar, I kept a running list of names. Oh, sorry. I kept a running list of names on my calendar, and they were names of guys that I knew if I needed them to join right away, I could get them to join.
Yeah.
But I would tag them along and say, oh, there's no rush. They're usually grads. All the seniors, obviously, with people that are listening that don't know recruiting, seniors are gold. Like you want your seniors because when they graduate, they have to ship soon.
Yep.
Grads can ship whenever you want them to, pretty much. If you need someone to ship right away, you talk to your grads.
Yeah.
They don't have to wait for the school year to end. So my grads, I had my list of, I need someone to join right away. And they probably weren't the best applicant, but I could get them in.
Right.
Now, it might take some finagling, some work on my end, but I will find a way to get them in.
Well, it's up to the Marine Corps to turn them into Marines.
Yeah, it's
right.
like, I'm throwing them up.
Right.
Now, what's difficult about recruiting, and I don't know how the Navy does it, but statistically, you're responsible for this individual up until they graduate boot camp.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they got on the plane.
No. So if they fail out of boot camp, that goes as a hit on your numbers, which I argued for. Why is this my problem? Like, I've trained them to meet the standard to go to boot camp. I'm not a drill instructor.
Right.
I can't train them to not roll their ankle in boot camp or break their arm.
Yeah.
But if they break their arm and they get kicked out, that falls on me.
Ouch.
It shows as they did not complete recruit training.
Yeah.
So yeah, my 3 years there is hard. You end up really learning a lot. But I was top 10 recruiter all 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I missed out recruiter of the year. I was kind of salty about that. By one person that dropped out of boot camp. One. And it was failure to adapt.
Oh, that's even worse. Like if they broke their arm or something, I could live with that.
So it was failure to adapt. I ended up arguing that, and they got rid of it, but then they hit me for a kid that had a faulty valve in his heart that we could not have tested for. Yeah. He got a waiver for a heart murmur. The Marine Corps said, yeah, he's good. Navy said he's good. MEPS cleared him. Government said, you're fine to go. We tested it. It shouldn't give him issues. And the kid ended up getting named the fainting goat in boot camp because he had a sticky valve, they called it.
Right.
It sounds like a heart murmur, but it performs fine. However, under high stress, the valve would stick to the wall and would close, and it would basically make him pass out. So anytime his blood pressure went up, a drill instructor would yell at him, he would literally, yes, sir, and just pass out on the floor. So I would, you call these drill instructors a lot.
Yeah.
And you talk to them, they all sound, like drill instructor frog voice, and they're like, I remember talking to this drill instructor the first time. He's like, are you recruiting so-and-so's, are you his recruiter? I'm like, yeah. He goes, what the hell did you give me? I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, man, every time I yell at this kid, the kid passes out. I don't know what to do to him. And I was like, what do you mean he's passing out? He goes, did you ever train this kid? I was like, yeah, he was fine. He's like, obviously not. This kid is terrified. He passes out of fear. And he thought that's what he was afraid of.
Right.
Turned out he loss of blood. This kid is literally fainting from blood loss. Like
the fainting goat.
Yeah. And I felt bad. This kid worked his butt off.
Yeah.
He was one of those kids that was a string bean. He could barely make weight to go.
Yeah.
He couldn't get enough weight to go.
Yeah.
Like I fed that kid so many McFlurries and everything before MEPS and burgers. He was throwing up water. I was making him make weight. It's like, you're shipping. I don't care. You're going to ship, at MEPS when they're weighing them at 4 a.m. It's like, you're going to make weight.
Get one way or the other.
Calling the MEPS liaisons in the morning, like weigh him first. Do not let him pee. All those tricks.
Oh, all the good stuff. Yeah.
It's like, you will make it.
Yeah. And so you weren't married at this time, were you?
So
when you were recruiting?
I was married before.
Uh-huh.
I met my ex-wife, my first year. I was about 10 months in recruiting. Mm-hmm. I met her and, we were just young. It was one of those young, military stories.
Starter marriage.
Yeah. And, it's like, she was a, good enough person. It's just, we just were really young. We were better friends than anything. And, she followed me to my next duty station and she was with me there and it just didn't work out. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those things where it's on recruiting, you're a totally different person because you're stressed out all the time. You're working so many hours and then you change and you go to the fleet where it's a normal-ish 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. You are kind of like, now you're back to your normal self a little bit and it's almost like learning a different person.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the main reason. And, it's just didn't work out, but we were married for about 3 years and got divorced. Just the best decision for us. Yeah. But yeah, so I was, we moved out to 29 Palms, California. And when I was getting orders, I wanted to lat move. Like I told you in the beginning, I didn't want to be motor T.
Right.
I hated it. So one thing I did have a passion for was EOD, and because I worked with them a lot in Afghanistan. In all of our training, we worked with EOD in pre-deployment, and I made a lot of good friends that moved into the EOD community. So while I was on recruiting, I had to do a lot of convincing, but I convinced them to let me go and do a screener on recruiting duty. So I had to give up a lot of bones. Like I had to basically make the mission of the actual station.
Yeah.
That month. And they gave me kind of like a pass to like throw just one person up the next month if I was to go. So I went down to Quantico. I did the screener down there at the EOD center, bomb suit test, everything, and passed. Spoke to the master sergeant, the captain, and the chief warrant officer there. It's a very cool community, just the EOD community, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you. Like, I think you'd be a good fit." And they have to basically give you the blessing,
right?
And then they call the monitor, who basically controls everyone in that MOS. He gives them orders. That's how the Marine Corps works. There's one guy. They call him the monitor, but in each MOS field has one.
You sit on an iron throne.
Basically, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And they work in Quantico. So it's like, if you call them, like their hours or whatever they want them to be.
Yeah.
So, I spoke to him briefly. He's like, "All right, sounds like you're going to be a good fit. I'll put in your lat move package. I'll move it forward." Well, in order for that to get approved, your monitor in your MOS has to release you. So mind you, I'm on recruiting duty. I was a sergeant, and I'm about to finish my special duty assignment. And in doing so, that's when you start to look at getting promoted to staff NCO.
Yeah.
Because now you're ahead of the game. You're completing all your PME. So I have my reenlistment package tied to this lat move. And it's my only chance to get it, because there's a term service limit for when you can lat move into this community. And you can only be a sergeant. And you have to be less than like 8 years or something like that. And I knew if I go to another unit, like I'm not going to get released. I'm going to probably pick up staff sergeant soon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, my time's ticking. So they hold my reenlistment package till a month prior to my EAS, my end of service date. And you're familiar with it. And if it comes back denied and you have 30 days left, you have 30 days to find a job.
Yeah.
So I'm sweating and I don't have orders. My wife at the time is like, "Where are we going? Like, I need to know what I'm doing." And I'm like, "I don't know either." So anyway, reenlistment comes back approved, lat move denied.
Oh.
And that was gutting, because at that point, what do you do? Now I have a wife, I have a life. I don't have a job lined up. Like I throw all my eggs in this basket, So ended up just saying, okay, I want to go back to the infantry unit somewhere on West Coast. I want to go to Camp Pendleton. And my monitor, who denied me, said, "Well, all right, sounds good." Gives me orders, gives me 29 Palms, California. And at the time I was like, there's no way this is right. I said, "Camp Pendleton." He goes, "I gave you West Coast. It's best, only thing I got."
Oh my God.
Yeah. So just kind of got the green weenie there and just kind of suck it up and go with it. So we went out to 29.
You think those guys are the guys that used to get their asses kicked in high school?
Something. It's a power trip.
Yeah.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
I've only met a couple that are like actually genuine, like they care about you. But and I understand they have a weird role, because there's thousands of Marines that are in my community.
Right.
They hear every sob story in the world. I get it.
Yeah.
But man, that one hurt.
I had a huge advantage when I was in Norfolk. We actually took a trip up to the Pentagon and met with, we call them detailers in the Navy, met with our detailers. So I got to see the guy face to face, with each other in the eye. It was a really good experience, but 9 times out of 10, it's just not like that.
Yeah.
So I was just, that's crazy.
They would do their tours. They'd go base to base, and they'd have all the monitors go one time, and they'd have the whole base go, and you just meet them. And it's a lot of the junior guys, they meet them. They're like, "I'm thinking about reenlisting and I'd like to go here." And it's like, "Yeah, you'll get what you get," type of thing. But the more senior guys, they know them most of the time.
Right.
And you want to get on good graces with them, kind of get them to know you so they can put you in a good fit of a unit.
Yeah.
And I remember meeting this guy, and he just didn't care who you were. It's like, yeah, unless you're like a staff NCO or a gunny or above, like, I don't really care about you. You're a dime a dozen type of thing.
Right.
Which, Motor T's the third largest MOS in the Marine Corps. I get it.
Go ahead and get out. Teach me a lesson.
Yeah. It's like, I got a billion more of you.
Right. So you go to 29 Palms.
Yeah, so I'm with 7th Marines, 29 Palms, and 7th Marines. It's a very historic unit. It's one of the first units to, go anywhere. If you're ever going to deploy the Marine Corps, it's 7th Marines is one of the first units you're ever going to send to 1st Marine Division. So 7th and 5th Marines are very highly decorated. So I worked at 7th Marine Regiment headquarters. We ran the truck company over there. I became the Motor T Ops Chief. So, we have a platoon of about 80 guys. And I'm going from recruiting duty where I'm hands in my pockets and knowing my community. I'm in civvies most of the time, talking to people, and now I'm in charge of 80 guys that are running around the largest training base in the United States. Like landmass wise, and we are responsible for supporting every unit that is training to go overseas and deploy. It was a shock.
Yeah,
it's like I have to remember how to do all this stuff. I haven't been in a truck in forever. I've been in a Govy,
right?
So that it was hard. It's a hard change. I made some great memories there. I think the challenges I have there made me the professional I am today. Because I was promoted to staff sergeant a couple months after I got over there. So I got I picked up my rocker there, and that is when you start getting treated differently. As a staff NCO, you're now more of a delegator. You're not the doer anymore, and it's a learning curve.
Is that a hard transition for you?
It was a hard transition at the time because I was a doer coming off recruiting duty. Yeah. You have to be, right?
Yes, you do.
There is no delegation. Like, even if you're the boss of a station, you're doing a lot. Now I'm delegating. I have 80 people that now I have to trust them to do the job. And, that was difficult. And it was a lot of responsibility. I mean, we had 250 pieces of rolling stock that I was in charge of. So like that's water bowls, trucks, trailers, everything like that. If something's down, you can't support a mission, you're answering to a colonel,
right?
So it's a lot of stress, high op tempo. It's what I asked for, but I wanted to deploy again, and I wanted to be training again. I didn't want to sit in like an aviation unit and just sit in an office. Like I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to get out in the field and train, and that's what I did. It was a good time. We did a lot of cool stuff. 29 Palms, you can drop everything but a nuke on that place. It's kind of unique.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. But yeah, it's when I was there, I had a major hip surgery. It was like a lingering injury I had for years, and the military. I think everyone in the military, especially the Marine Corps, I can't speak for the other branches, but if you're hurt, you don't say anything. You just suck it up and just go.
Right.
Like you don't want to be considered the weakling or the light duty guy. And so I had many kind of pretty serious injuries that I just kind of sucked it up and kept going. Especially on deployment. One thing was my hip. Anytime I ran, it was a shearing pain, went up my back and the front of my leg. It felt like fire. And eventually I was kind of going through my divorce at the time, and I was kind of in a weird transition of life. And my mentor at the time, Master Sergeant Barksdale, this great guy. He kind of knew I was going through some stuff, and he could kind of tell. I never let it affect my work. He could tell that, because we worked in conjoining offices.
Right.
He could tell I flip a switch when Marines are around. When I'm not, I just look kind of defeated. And he's like, "Listen, are you staying in or getting out?" I'm like, "I truly don't know." Like I'm at I'm in a billet that's a gunnery sergeant billet, so a billet above my pay grade. I'm performing at a high level at this point. So career wise, I'm doing great. Personal life, not great. And he can tell that's affecting my, like that glimmer in your eye type of thing. It's gone. He's like, "You don't look like you're having fun anymore. Like you don't look like you're enjoying it." And he goes, "Eventually that will roll into your professional life." He goes, "At some point it will. And if you don't enjoy coming to work every day, like you don't want to be that staff NCO that rolls in and just makes life miserable for people because you're miserable."
Right.
And I really appreciate him for that. He pushed me to be better every day, professionally and personally. And he said, "Listen, if you're going to get out, you need to update your medical record with everything." He's like, "You just list everything every nick, bump, bruise that you have listed." He goes, "Because the worst thing," he was 18-year vet. Like he's been in for almost retirement at that point. He's like, this is Twilight tour type of thing. He's like, listen, I have a lot of buddies that are out and things pop up when you get out. When you stop using it, all these issues you were dealing with that were kind of like little nicks or little, ankle bumps or tweaks, those things get way worse when you stop doing it every day. And I'm glad he did. I'm glad he told me that because I got fixed. I went to medical. They're like, yeah, you have a torn labrum and it's like flipped inside out. And I had pretty major hip surgery on that. They had to dislocate my hip and refold it all back and shave down my bones, and it was crazy. But I spent going through that year of being divorced and then doing the recovery. I didn't want to be one of those lame ducks that had like this lingering like limp, and this type of surgery I was told can be either great or awful. Yeah. But it's really how you approach your physical therapy. And I got really into fitness. I focused heavily on physically just being just a beast. And I think going through a divorce, I had all my attention just focused into doing that. Yeah. And I think, I got probably in the best shape of my life. I had great recovery, and I still have pain, like some pain that's never going to leave from that hip. But I think mentality wise, I needed that. I made a lot of friends that were outside of the military while I was out there. I had a really good close group that were at my gym that I went to, and they truly helped me recover mentally. So I was going through a lot after recruiting and then through the divorce. And like I said, my hip surgery, I was in a bad spot. Yeah. I just wasn't in a good spot. And they truly saved me a lot of possible heartache and whatnot. Just being there, Yeah. I think you always need those kind of friends.
Yeah, you do.
Just something that's takes your mind off it and they make you better.
Right. Because otherwise you could get into a real pity party. Yeah. And that's not going to help you get any better. No. For sure.
No. Yeah. My friends Jared and Christy out there, and they just moved to Alaska. They're physical therapists. Oh. So there's the funny thing. They're physical therapists. They're at my gym and they helped me recover. They kind of gave me, pointers on how to get better, and they're still some of my closest friends today.
Yeah. It falls right into the everything happens for a reason category.
100%. Yeah. 100%. And there's like people that I truly would never have met if I did not get orders to try bombs that I didn't want. Yeah. Or lat moved over to EOD.
Or go get the surgery you didn't want because you didn't want to be that lame duck, right?
Exactly. You never know what'll happen.
Yeah, so that's true. So did you get out after all the surgeries and everything? Did you? Yeah. You got out of the military then? Yeah. So what year was this?
So this was 2017 or between 2017 and 2018 is when I got my surgery. Uh-huh. And then 2019 was my real year of like getting fit and fully recovered. And then 2020 I got out. Okay. March 2020.
Something else happened in March 2022. Yeah. So where did you go from 29 Palms? You come back to Michigan?
Yeah. So
for COVID.
So I got out March 28th, 2020. I had about 60 days of leave that I could use. So it was like June is when my EAS was. So I was at like 11 years and 10 months. So just under 12 years of time served. And I knew it was a hard decision I've ever had to make in my life was getting out. Because I truly loved being a Marine, but I knew for my mental well-being, I needed to get out. I just was not enjoying it anymore, which is really hard to come to terms with. 'Cause it's like, I love it, but it's not good for me. Mm-hmm. That was hard. Because my trajectory was, I was going to be like an E9 careerist. I was in positions lined up that where they were like, I want you to stay in. So, I had some really hard decisions to make. I ended up getting out. Best decision I've ever made in my life. Like I said, got out at March 28th and I get home finally free. I get home April 1st is when I drive into my driveway at my mom's house. Uh-huh. And I was getting ready to buy a house. Like I wanted to go house searching when I got home. I was ready to use my VA loan and they shut everything down. Yeah. Everything down. And I was like, oh my God, this is awful. So stuck in a house with my mom and her husband now, who's a great guy. They've been married for 15 years now. And I'm living at home with my mom in the basement. And that mentally going from, I'm in a bad spot, I've recovered, and mentally I'm great. And now I'm back home living in my mom's basement and I just quit the job I loved.
And you literally cannot go anywhere.
I am stuck in the house. Yeah. And I'm living with my mom, who I truly haven't lived with in almost 15 years, and she wants to catch up in time. And with lost time. And I'm like, I need to do my own thing.
Yeah.
You feel bad, but it's like, I understand where you're coming from, but also I can't live at home. I can't. So as soon as, they opened up the real estate market again in, I think July that year, 2020, you could see houses, but it was like, you had to mask up and you had to glove up, and it was
take a shower and hand cleaner and all that other garbage.
So my uncle was my real estate agent. He helped me find my first house, and I ended up meeting my now wife on Hinge online. So it's like a dating app.
Oh, I've heard of all kinds of things, but I've never heard of Hinge.
Yeah. So Hinge, I met her on Hinge. It was, we started dating when I was living in my mom's basement. So I'm trying to explain that.
You were truly the man of her dreams.
Yeah, I know. I was like, so, what's even funnier is I met her, you couldn't go anywhere to date. So I said, you want to meet up in Mayberry State Park on a walk? And she's like, yeah, my wife is very strong-willed and very like, I can handle it myself.
You could have been a serial killer, though.
And all of her friends said, put on your location. You're going to meet a stranger in the woods. So
what could go wrong?
I know. So anyway, we took a long walk. It was only supposed to be 4 miles, and I ended up getting us lost, and we ended up walking about 10 because it's all like interconnected trails. And if you don't take the right trail, then you have to do another loop. And so I ended up messing that up.
Good thing you had that hip fixed.
Yeah, I know, right? But I ended up buying a house and lived in it for about 10 months. And then my wife and I were dating at the time still. And she's like, well, I don't know why you bought a house. We're kind of serious at this point. Why don't you just move in with me? So now I rented out my house to a friend, and he ended up buying it. And, we kind of the last, after 2020, we dated for about 2 years and got married. And, we've been married ever since. It's been great.
That's awesome. Kids?
We just had our first.
Oh,
she's just turned 7 months yesterday.
Oh,
so she's getting big now. But one thing I will thank my wife for, she's an amazing person. She makes me better in a lot of aspects. I heard Brandon Mickus when you had him on. He said, and I think you alluded to this too. It's find someone you can't live without, and not someone you can live with.
Yeah.
My wife truly makes me better. I wanted to go to college when I got out. It's something I really wanted to do. And it was I always found an excuse not to do it. I was like, it's COVID. I can't do this. I was working at a job when I got out, at a manufacturing facility for Chrysler. We build parts for the assembly line.
Yeah.
I was working third shift, and I was dating my wife at the time, and third shift sucks, and I was like, that was an excuse. I can't go to college. I'm in third shift.
Right.
She's like, you can do it. You're just being lazy. My wife's very cutthroat.
Yeah.
That's how her family is too. And I'm glad my daughter has that to look up to, but she pushed me, and I just graduated college this last year, and, I got my bachelor's, and I never would have done it without her pushing me. Truly never would have done it. But yeah, now it's funny. I work at a company that, it's a machining company, and they do a lot of custom fabrication and whatnot. And I work in coding, but one of their main things that we, are known for is our mine rollers. We make mine rollers for the government. So,
a few things about that.
So it kind of helped me out in the interview, but I work 5 minutes from my house, and my wife and I were, we bought our house we're going to live in for hopefully the rest of our lives. And, we're in a great spot. It's amazing how things you experience in life, you end up doing things you never thought you were going to do.
Right.
Everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that. My experience in life, I think are going to make me a better human being. And, it's really how you view things is what you really need to pay attention to. Is not everything's the worst thing in the world. If it's happening to you, it probably feels that way, but eventually it will turn out there's a reason behind it, or you're going to learn something from it. But yeah, I think me pushing myself and getting thrown into these unique situations over and over and over again throughout my life have made me who I am. And I think it's going to make me a great father, and, it's going to make me, really appreciate it down the road. And that's why I wanted to do this. I want to kind of give something to my daughter she can listen to down the road.
Yeah. And that's, everything's kind of working out for you. I want to go back to you talked about, when Mickus and I were talking, and I said, the key is not finding, that person that you can live with, but the person that you cannot live without. Interestingly enough, do you know who said that?
You mentioned it, I think.
G. Gordon Liddy,
Really?
who was, he wrote the book Will, but he was like the CIA guy that worked for Nixon and did all this crazy stuff. There's like a movie about him where they want to know if they can trust him, and he takes his hand and he puts a lighter underneath it and holds the flame, like. He's a really tough guy, but he had a talk show back in the 90s, and I remember him saying that. It just stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Like, of all the crazy shit this guy said and did, that's the thing that stuck with me. And I thought G. Gordon Liddy said that.
Yeah.
But Mrs. Liddy was amazing, and she kept him, once he got out of prison, she kept him on the straight and narrow. I think that as a man, in the more men I meet, like there's always, it's not a woman that's behind you anymore. It's this woman that stands next to you to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it's good that we can find that. The other phrase that I hear a lot from my military friends are my now wife. Right? Is my now wife, because people have to understand that distinction, because when I talk, it's the same thing. I have a couple of ex-wives and you don't want to get those stories mixed up.
Yeah.
You get in big trouble.
It's funny. I always make jokes of because you meet people in the military, a lot of them have been married multiple times.
Oh yes.
Just kind of your initiation in the military. You got to have one of those lying around somewhere. And, I always make a joke. Yeah, second's the best. The first one, you get all your mistakes out of the way.
Right.
But it's been amazing. I couldn't imagine myself being married to anyone else. She's a great mom, tough as nails. And she's got my back and I have hers type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's one thing that's, that really drew me to her was how little she needed to be like coddled and like carried along. Like I never wanted to be with someone that, I needed to hold their hand to do anything. Like my wife is the exact opposite. Like she's telling me she's a boss lady, type of thing. But, truly she makes me better and I make her better. Mm-hmm. So, it's great.
Yeah. You can't ask for much more than that.
No.
My saying is third time's the charm. So
there you go.
Anyway.
There you go. Hopefully the second best is for me.
Yeah. We all have our place and it sounds like you're where you need to be. So it's been great talking with you today. I've learned a ton. I love sitting down and making new friends. So this is really good for me. I always ask people the same question. I think throughout our conversation, you've sort of answered this, but I want to put a finer point on it. For people listening to this years from now, when neither one of us are here, what message do you want them to take away from the way you've lived your life, but also from our conversation today?
Man, it's hard. It's hard because there's so many little lessons you learn. Like what's one thing that truly, makes that something someone should pull away? I think taking it day by day is something that I really focused on. I think whatever struggles you're going through, whatever struggles that they may be, family, professional life, whatever, you can only do what you are able to do right now. Don't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, a year from now. You can't worry about it. You're going to stress yourself out, which will affect many other facets of your life. You can only handle what's currently in front of you. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future. What's right now? Take it day by day. And truthfully, that has helped me in my professional life. That's helped me in the military, my personal life. It's, if you're not here in the now, focusing on the closest problem at hand, you're not going to be present for your family, at work. It's where you start making mistakes. Mm-hmm. I think just being present and understanding what is you are controlling, what you have under your control is what you need to focus on. It's probably the best thing I could say.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking the time out today on a Sunday to come and talk with me.
I thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Veterans Archives podcast. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen and honor the incredible stories of our nation's heroes. Don't forget, you can catch us every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Wreaths Across America Radio, or stream past episodes anytime on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and as I've said before, any place you can find a podcast, you can find the Veterans Archives podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share our content on YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and across all social media. Every share helps us reach more people and preserve more stories. The Veterans Archives podcast is a nonprofit initiative, and our mission is simple: to give veterans a voice and ensure their stories are never forgotten. This service is completely free for veterans because their sacrifices deserve to be recognized and remembered. You want to help? Follow us, spread the word, and if you know a veteran with a story to tell, send them our way. Visit us at veteransarchives.org to learn more about how you can get involved. Thanks again for tuning in, and most importantly, thank you to all the veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice. Until next time, take care, and we will see you on the next episode of the Veterans Archives Podcast.